My son was rushed to the hospital for emergency cardiac surgery at 3:40 in the morning. When I arrived at the hospital 5 hours later, the cardiac surgeon didn't congratulate me on my son's survival. He pulled me into a private room, locked the door, and said, "Someone is trying to harm your son. Get your son out of here." Then he handed me a white envelope. When I opened the envelope, my world collapsed. Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Important note, this is a fictional story, with dramatized elements created to deliver a powerful lesson about trusting your instincts. While characters and events aren't real, the message carries genuine significance. Now, let me tell you what happened when I opened that envelope. The phone shrieked at 3:40 a.m., ripping me from sleep with a violence that left my heart hammering. I already knew the way you know, when headlights sweep across your ceiling in the dead of night, that everything I'd carefully built over 70 years was about to shatter. I grabbed the receiver on the third ring. My hand was steady. 40 years as an aerospace engineer taught me that much when the system's failing panic kills faster than the malfunction. Mr. Prescott. A woman's voice, professional but strained. This is Banner Desert Medical Center in Phoenix. I'm calling about your son, Nolan. The floor went cold beneath my bare feet. Your son has been rushed into emergency cardiac surgery. She continued each word a hammer blow. His heart stopped twice in the ambulance. The surgical team is working on him now. I stood there in my bedroom, 70 years old, widower alone on a ranch in Truth or Consequences. New Mexico? And the universe tilted. That's impossible, I heard myself say. He ran a marathon 3 months ago. There must be some mistake. I'm sorry, sir. The doctors are doing everything they can. His wife is here. You should come as soon as possible. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver in my hand, my engineer's brain already running calculations. It didn't want to run. Nolan Prescott, 38 years old, my only son. 6 weeks ago, he'd passed his annual physical with flying colors. His doctor had joked about his resting heart rate 52 beats per minute, the cardiovascular system of an athlete half his age. 6 weeks. What changes in 6 weeks that makes a healthy man's heart stop twice? I moved through the dark house on autopilot, pulling on jeans and a flannel shirt, grabbing my truck keys and wallet. My sister Ramona was asleep in the guest room she'd driven down from Albuquerque for the weekend, but I didn't wake her. Not yet. Not until I knew something real. At 70, you learn to trust the silence between the heartbeats of a crisis. I scanned the hospital corridors for anomalies the same way I used to scan a cockpit for a failing circuit. In my world, a flickering light means a short. Here, the anomaly was Celeste's terrifying calm. The data provided by her performance didn't match the environment of a dying man's bedside. My gut, honed by decades of finding hairline fractures and reinforced steel, told me the entire structure of this family was about to collapse. I was in my truck by 350 tires, spitting gravel as I hit the main road. 330 miles. 5 hours if I pushed it, maybe 4.5 if I ignored every speed limit between here and Phoenix. The desert stretched black and infinite under a sky full of stars that suddenly seemed obscene in their indifference. My headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness as I merged onto I-25 North. The highway was empty, just me and the 18-wheelers hauling goods through the night. I set the cruise control at 85 and let my mind do what it does best, analyze. Nolan had sounded fine when we talked last Tuesday. Busy with work, he was a software architect, good money, stressful, but manageable. He'd mentioned being tired, said Celeste was making him take vitamins, some health kick she was on. He'd laughed about it. You know how she is, Dad. Always worrying. Celeste. His wife of 5 years. Blonde, beautiful, attentive. I'd never warmed to her the way a father should warm to his son's wife, but I'd chalked it up to my own defenses. I'd lost my Sarah 5 years ago, and maybe I just wasn't ready to share Nolan with anyone. But now, racing through the dark with my son dying in a Phoenix hospital, that old wariness stirred like something waking up. The sky began to lighten around Albuquerque dawn, breaking pink and gold over the Sandia Mountains. Mile marker 115 blurred past. 30 years ago, I taught Nolan to drive on this same stretch, his nervous laugh, his white knuckles on the wheel, my hand ready to grab it if he panicked. Now, I was the one with white knuckles, racing to save him from something I couldn't see or understand. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat around 8:30 a.m. I grabbed it at a red light in Mesa, the Phoenix suburbs spreading like a stain across the desert. A text from Celeste. Nolan awake, surgery successful. Doctors say he's stable now. No need to rush, he's resting. I read it 3 times. No need to rush. I'm sorry, what? Your husband's heart stopped twice. He went under the knife in the middle of the night. And you're texting his father to tell him there's no need to rush. What kind of wife does that? What kind of human being? The light turned green. Someone honked behind me. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. That text should have brought relief, should have loosened the vice grip around my chest, should have made me ease off the accelerator and take a breath. Instead, it did the opposite. My engineer's instinct, the one that had saved projects and caught fatal flaws in million-dollar systems, screamed one word wrong. Something was wrong, not just with Nolan's heart, with Celeste, with the whole picture. Banner Desert Medical Center appeared on the horizon at 8:43 a.m., a sprawling complex of white buildings glinting in the morning sun. I swung into the parking lot, found a space near the emergency entrance, and killed the engine. My hands were shaking, not from exhaustion I'd driven through worse, from something else. Something cold and certain settling in my gut. What kind of wife tells a father not to come when his son nearly died? The question lodged in my brain like a calculation that wouldn't balance, like a decimal point in the wrong place that makes the whole equation collapse. I climbed out of the truck, my legs unsteady after 5 hours behind the wheel. The Arizona heat hit me like a wall. It was barely 9 in the morning and already pushing 90 degrees. I locked the truck and started toward the emergency entrance, and with every step, that cold certainty grew heavier. I should have felt relief at Celeste's text. Instead, my hands had tightened on the steering wheel. I'd pressed harder on the gas, and something cold had settled in my gut. The same instinct that had saved me in 40 years of engineering. When the numbers don't add up, someone's lying. And if Celeste was lying about something as simple as whether I should come to the hospital, what else was she lying about? I pushed through the automatic doors into the frigid blast of hospital air conditioning, and I knew with the same bone-deep certainty that had guided me through 4 decades of complex systems that I was about to discover something terrible. The only question was whether I'd figure it out in time to save my son. The waiting room was everything hospitals are. Fluorescent lights bleaching color from skin, vending machine coffee smell mixing with antiseptic. That particular hush where hope and grief sit side by side on plastic chairs. And there she was. The memory of Celeste in the waiting room earlier flashed in my mind, but it felt different now. Holding this toxicology report, the precision of her appearance shifted from mere vanity to cold-blooded calculation. While Nolan was tethered to machines in a fight for every breath. She had sat there with every hair in place, a living testament to a woman who had planned her mourning as carefully as she had planned his murder. Her composed mask wasn't the result of strength. It was the chilling preparation of a predator who had already moved on to the next phase of her plan. My son's heart had stopped twice, and his wife had taken time to accessorize. She looked up and saw me. The transformation was instant and flawless. Her face crumpled, tears welled. She rose and rushed toward me with outstretched arms. "Oh, Harlan, thank God you're here. It's been the most terrifying night of my life. I thought I was going to lose him." She embraced me. I smelled her perfume, expensive, deliberate. I patted her back mechanically, my engineer's brain cataloging every detail. Her breathing was steady, no tremor in her hands. The tears in her eyes somehow hadn't smudged her makeup. "The nurse said his heart stopped twice," I said, stepping back to look at her. "What did the doctors tell you?" "They're still running tests." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue she had already been holding prepared. "Something about cardiac arrhythmia. It came out of nowhere. We were just having dinner, and he collapsed." "Dinner," I filed that away. The nurse had said 3:40 a.m. What kind of dinner happens at 3 in the morning? I've met a lot of people in 70 years. Engineers, pilots, military brass. I can tell you this: genuine grief doesn't come with coordinated jewelry. Genuine terror doesn't pause to reapply lipstick. And genuine love doesn't text a father to tell him not to rush when the person they love is dying. But I nodded. I sat down beside her. I played my role concerned father, grateful for devoted daughter-in-law. Because if something was wrong here, if my instinct was right, I needed to see more. I needed to watch her when she didn't think she was being watched. "Tell me everything," I said. She launched into a story that sounded rehearsed, the two of them eating late. Nolan complaining of chest pain, the collapse, her frantic 911 call. Her timing was perfect, her emotions calibrated. She was good. If I hadn't been trained to spot system failures, trained to trust the data over the narrative, I might have believed her. But the data didn't match. Healthy 38-year-old men don't have massive cardiac events during dinner. Hearts that strong don't just stop. And wives who've spent the night in surgical waiting rooms don't look like they've just stepped out of a salon. My engineer's brain was screaming now, the same alarm that went off when calculations didn't balance, when test results contradicted theory. Something about this woman, this situation, this perfect performance. It was all wrong. The waiting room door opened. A man in surgical scrubs entered, tall, silver-haired, maybe 65, with the kind of steady hands you trust to hold a scalpel, and the kind of tired eyes that have seen too much. He scanned the room, found us approached with measured steps. "Mr. Prescott," he extended his hand. "I'm Dr. Conrad Thatcher. I performed your son's surgery." I stood and shook his hand. Firm grip, direct eye contact. "How is he?" "Your son survived the surgery." He glanced at Celeste, then back to me. However, his cardiac event was highly unusual for someone his age and health status. "What caused it?" I asked. "He's a marathon runner, perfect health." Dr. Thatcher's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We're still investigating. Some of the toxicology results are—" He paused, choosing his word carefully. "Concerning. Mr. Prescott, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" The room temperature dropped 20 degrees. "Private—" Celeste's voice went up half an octave, the first genuine emotion I'd heard from her. "Why can't you tell us both I'm his wife?" Dr. Thatcher's eyes remained on me, professional, careful. But I caught something in his expression, urgency warning, a message he couldn't say out loud. "Mrs. Whitfield, it's standard protocol to speak with next of kin separately. Medical privacy regulations. It will only take a few minutes." "But I'm his wife," Celeste repeated. "I have medical power of attorney. And Mr. Prescott is his father, enlisted emergency contact." The doctor's tone was pleasant but final. "I'll update you both shortly. Mr. Prescott, I looked at Celeste. For just a fraction of a second, maybe half a heartbeat, her mask slipped. I saw calculation flash across her face, cold and sharp as a scalpel. Then fear. Real fear. Not for Nolan, for herself. Then the mask was back perfect and intact. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I understand. I'll wait here." Why would a doctor need to speak to me privately about my son's medical condition? What could he possibly need to say that my son's wife shouldn't hear? The questions pounded in my skull as I followed Dr. Thatcher across the waiting room toward the hallway. I glanced back. Celeste was sitting again, hands folded, face composed. But her eyes were following us, tracking us with an intensity that had nothing to do with concern and everything to do with control. I'd seen that look before in tense negotiations and high-stakes meetings. The look of someone calculating their next move, wondering if their plan was about to unravel. The hallway stretched ahead, empty and echoing. Dr. Thatcher's hand touched my elbow, guiding me forward with barely concealed urgency. We passed a nurse's station, a supply closet, a door marked private consultation. He opened it, ushered me inside, closed it behind us. Then he turned to face me. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't from surgery. It was from moral weight, the heaviness of knowing something terrible and having to say it out loud. "Mr. Prescott," he said quietly. And in that moment, I knew my 5-hour drive through the desert, my cold suspicions, my engineer's instinct that something was catastrophically wrong, all of it was about to be confirmed in a way I wasn't prepared for. His next words hit me like a physical blow. "I think someone is trying to kill your son." The lock clicked with a finality that made my stomach drop. "Doctor." Thatcher didn't waste time with pleasantries. He pulled a thick manila envelope from inside his coat and placed it on the table between us, like evidence at a crime scene. "Your son is being poisoned," he said, "and I can prove it." The words hit me, but didn't land, couldn't land. They were too big, too impossible. I stared at the envelope. "Poisoned," I repeated. The word felt foreign in my mouth. Dr. Thatcher opened the envelope and pulled out a lab report, sliding it across the table. Numbers and medical terms I didn't recognize, except for one line, highlighted in yellow: digoxin, 3.2 nanograms per milliliter. The toxicology screen showed digoxin levels of 3.2 nanograms per milliliter, he said, tapping the number. "Your son has never been prescribed this medication. That level doesn't happen by accident, it's systematic poisoning." I don't understand. My engineering brain was trying to catch up, trying to process data that made no sense. What is digoxin? A heart medication. In controlled doses, it regulates cardiac rhythm. In doses like this, he gestured at the report, It causes cardiac arrest in perfectly healthy people. It's nearly undetectable without specific testing. Most hospitals don't screen for it unless they're looking. How long? My voice came out rough. How long has someone been doing this to him? Dr. Thatcher's jaw tightened. Based on these levels, I'd estimate 6 to 8 weeks of regular doses. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. The dosing pattern suggests medical knowledge or guidance from someone with medical knowledge. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process. My son, my healthy, vibrant son who ran marathons and coached his kids' soccer, had been poisoned. Systematically. For months. While I talked to him every Sunday, laughing about nothing, asking about work and the kids and what they had for dinner, he was dying and didn't even know it. There's more. Dr. Thatcher pulled out more papers, spreading them across the table like a prosecutor building a case. I shouldn't have these. I could lose my license for accessing them, but I recognized the pattern. Insurance documents. 3 separate policies, each page stamped with dates from the past 11 months. I scanned the numbers, 300,000, 350,000, 250,000, all with the same beneficiary name, Celeste Whitfield. In $900,000, I said. These insurance policies were all filed in the past 11 months. Your son never mentioned purchasing life insurance, more. Nolan would have told me. My hands were shaking now. He tells me everything. Financial decisions, car purchases, everything. She must have forged his signature. That's what I suspect. Dr. Thatcher pulled out another document, pharmacy records, prescription logs, highlighted names and dates. These show digoxin purchases over the past 3 months. The prescriptions were written under your son's name with forged medical credentials. The dispensing pharmacist is listed here, Marcus Miller, 45 years old, works at a Phoenix Walgreens. I stared at the name. Marcus Miller, a stranger. A man I'd never heard of who was helping murder my son for money. Mr. Prescott, I saw this exact scenario in 2018. Dr. Thatcher's voice dropped lower. A 32-year-old woman, Jennifer Morrison. Same digoxin poisoning, same cardiac presentation, same pharmacist name in the records. Her husband collected $1.2 million in life insurance. The case was closed as natural causes because nobody thought to test for digoxin. The room tilted. 2018, another victim. Same method, same pharmacist, same ending. Except that woman died. My son almost did. And there was a husband who collected over $1 million and walked away free. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why not go to the police? Because the police move slowly and your daughter-in-law moves fast. He leaned forward, urgent. Mr. Prescott, I did go to the police in 2018. I filed a report, showed them the toxicology, explained the pattern. They investigated for 6 weeks and found insufficient evidence. The prosecutor said the case was circumstantial. That husband is still walking around free. And so what am I supposed to do with this? Protect your family. His eyes locked on mine. Your son will survive. I'll make sure of that. I'll keep him in ICU under 24-hour observation, and I'll document everything. But your grandchildren, Lyra and Beckett, they're in danger. The words hit me like ice water. Lyra, Beckett, 12 and 9 years old. I saw them at Christmas bright-eyed and laughing, Lyra showing me her straight-A report card, Beckett demonstrating his new skateboard tricks in the driveway. If she's willing to kill your son for insurance money, Dr. Thatcher continued, those children are witnesses and obstacles. They live in that house. They see things. And if she's working with this Marcus Miller, if they've done this before and gotten away with it, they have a system. They know how to clean up loose ends. What about Nolan? I can't leave him here with her. I'll keep him sedated and in isolation. Only authorized medical personnel allowed in his room. But those children are in her house right now, Mr. Prescott. You need to move fast. She's already calculating her next move. Here's what you need to understand about being a father. Every instinct in your body screams to protect your child. But when your grandchildren are in a killer's house and your son is fighting for his life in an ICU bed, you have to choose. You have to make the impossible calculation. And you have to live with it. I chose the ones who couldn't save themselves. What do I tell her? I asked. Celeste, when I leave here, what reason do I give for taking the kids? Tell her you want to spare them the trauma of seeing their father in ICU. Tell her you're taking them to your ranch for a few days. Be calm, be casual. Don't let her see that you know. He gathered the documents back into the envelope and handed it to me. Everything you need is in here. Evidence, timelines, insurance records. Once you have the children safe, call the police. Show them this. Make them listen. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Heavier than it should, like it carried the weight of 2 deaths, one averted one that happened 5 years ago, because nobody believed this doctor. Dr. Thatcher was already at the door, hand on the lock. His face looked older than it had 15 minutes ago, carved with exhaustion and something that looked like guilt. "One more thing, Mr. Prescott," he said, voice heavy, with something like regret. When the 2018 case was investigated, they found evidence of 2 other suspicious deaths connected to that pharmacist. Your daughter-in-law may not be the first wife he's helped, and your son may not be the first victim to survive. He unlocked the door and was gone. I stood alone in that small consultation room, holding an envelope full of evidence that proved my son's wife was a serial killer, that my grandchildren were sleeping in a house with someone who'd orchestrated at least 3 murders and gotten away with all of them. My phone buzzed. A text from Celeste. "Everything okay, doctor? Seems very serious." I looked at those words, the perfect concerned wife, and felt something cold and lethal crystallize in my chest. She was good. She was careful. She'd done this before and walked away clean. But she'd made one mistake. She'd let one of her victims survive long enough for someone to notice the pattern. I typed back, "All fine. Nolan stable, coming out now." Then I tucked the envelope under my jacket and went to save my grandchildren from a woman who'd murdered for money and would murder again to keep her secret safe. I made it to the 3rd stall before my hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the envelope, locked the door, sat on the closed toilet lid, and opened the file that would show me exactly how my daughter-in-law had been killing my son. The first document was the toxicology report dated June 15th, 2023 today, just hours ago. 3.2 nanograms. It was a lethal blueprint written in clinical ink. This wasn't just a heart medication anymore. It was the weapon she had used to dismantle my son from the inside out. My engineer's brain struggled to process the cruelty of the math, 60%, above the limit of life, pushed into the territory of a slow, calculated execution. She hadn't just broken his heart. She had chemically sabotaged it while smiling over his morning coffee. 6 emergency room visit records. 6 separate dates over the past 8 weeks, each one documenting symptoms, dizziness, nausea, irregular heartbeat, chest pain, fatigue. Each one dismissed by doctors as stress over work anxiety. Each one signed off with recommendations for rest and follow-up with primary care physician. I remembered those weeks. I'd called Nolan every Sunday like clockwork. He'd sounded tired, said work was demanding mention, feeling run down. But when I asked if he was okay, he'd always said the same thing. "I'm fine, Dad. Celeste is taking good care of me." 6 ER visits. 6 times he told me he felt fine, just tired from work. 6 times she was there playing concerned wife, and the whole time she was poisoning him. You know what kills me? Not the poison, though. That's literal. It's the 6 ER visits. 6 times Nolan was crying for help, and nobody heard him. 6 times I could have saved him if I'd just paid attention. If I'd driven to Phoenix and looked him in the eye, instead of accepting his reassurances over the phone. But I didn't, and she knew I wouldn't. She'd been counting on it. I pulled out the next set of documents with hands that had stopped shaking and started feeling cold instead. Numb. Like my body was shutting down everything except the parts needed to process horror. 3 life insurance policies, each one bearing Nolan's signature, except they weren't his signatures. I'd seen my son's handwriting for 38 years. I'd saved his elementary school report cards, his college application essays, the thank you note he'd written when I bought him his first car. I knew the way he formed his capital N, the slight leftward slant of his lowercase letters. These signatures were forgeries, skilled ones, but forgeries nonetheless. Policy 1, $300,000, filed April 2023, beneficiary Celeste Whitfield. Policy 2, $350,000, filed January 2023, beneficiary Celeste Whitfield. Policy 3, $250,000, filed August 2022, beneficiary Celeste Whitfield. $900,000. That's what my son's life was worth to her. I've built million-dollar aircraft. I know the value of precision engineering, but I never knew someone could price a human being so cheap. There was more. Bank statements showing regular transfers from Nolan's account to an external account, $50,000 total over 6 months, $500 at a time. Small enough to avoid triggering alerts, The receiving account was listed under the name Marcus Miller. She'd been paying him, paying the pharmacist who provided the poison. This wasn't just murder, it was a business transaction, a contract killing disguised as marriage. The medical questionnaires attached to the insurance applications made my jaw clench. Question: does the insured have any current health conditions? Answer: no. Question: has the insured been hospitalized in the past year? Answer: no. Question: does the insured take any prescription medications? Answer: no. Every answer a lie. Every lie an act of premeditated murder. She planned this. Every signature forged, every medical lie, every dollar accounted for. This wasn't impulse. This was cold calculated murder for money. I turned to the next document and felt my breath catch. It was a chart handwritten compiled by Dr. Thatcher showing a timeline of deaths. 4 names, 4 dates, 4 causes of death. All cardiac arrest. All victims between ages 28 and 40. All previously healthy. All died between 2016 and 2022. Next to each name was a notation insurance payout. The numbers range from $800,000 to $1.4 million. And next to each payout amount was the same name, Marcus Miller, dispensing pharmacist. 4 people dead. My son was supposed to be number 5, and they've been doing this for at least 7 years, perfecting their method, getting away with murder. Paper clipped to one of the death certificates was a photograph. A woman's face, young, smiling, alive. The caption read, Jennifer Morrison, 32, died June 2018. Below it was a newspaper obituary survived by loving husband David Morrison. I flipped the page, another news clipping, this one from January 2019. Local businessman David Morrison announces engagement. The photo showed a man in his 30s standing next to a blonde woman. She was smiling at the camera, poised, beautiful. She looked exactly like Celeste. Not similar, not reminiscent, identical. Same bone structure, same smile, same calculating eyes. The nausea hit me then, physical, overwhelming, undeniable. I barely made it to the toilet before I was sick. When you see evidence that someone has been methodically killing your child for months, your body rebels against reality itself. I flushed, sat back, breathed. The flashbacks came unbidden. Thanksgiving 8 months ago. Nolan had looked pale, exhausted. I'd said something, Nolan, you look exhausted. You should see a doctor. And Celeste had laughed it off with that perfect smile. He's just working too hard. You know how dedicated he is. Then she'd changed the subject, asked me about my ranch, deflected every concern with practiced ease. I remembered her always insisting on making Nolan's morning coffee. Remembered her irritation when he mentioned grabbing lunch with coworkers. Remembered the way she'd slowly isolated him from friends, from extended family, from everyone who might notice he was dying. Every manipulation, every control tactic, she was ensuring maximum poisoning opportunity while preventing anyone from noticing. And I'd watched it happen. Chalked it up to her being possessive, overprotective. Never imagined I was watching a serial killer eliminate witnesses and ensure her victim had nowhere to turn. I should have known. I should have seen it. I should have trusted my gut when I first met her 5 years ago and thought something felt wrong beneath that perfect surface. But hindsight is a cruel teacher. I stuffed the documents back into the envelope, all except one I hadn't noticed before, stuck to the bottom of the stack. A printout, multiple pages formatted like a conversation. Text messages between 2 phone numbers, time-stamped over the past 3 months. I scanned the first few lines. My blood ran cold. Number 1, timeline on track. He's showing symptoms. Number 2, good. Increased dosage. Let's aim for end of month. Number 1, insurance cleared. 900,000 confirmed. Number 2, perfect. Once he's gone, we split 50-50 like always. The last message was time-stamped 7:42 a.m. today, 4 hours ago. Number 1, he's awake. We have a problem. I splashed water on my face and looked at myself in that harsh bathroom mirror. 70 years old, exhausted, furious. Somewhere in this hospital, Celeste was waiting, calculating, probably texting Marcus Miller about their next move. But I had their messages. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And I had 2 grandchildren who needed saving before these monsters realized their plan had been exposed. I stepped into the hospital hallway and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. Shock has a way of burning off, leaving only cold purpose behind. I scrolled to my sister's number and hit call. She answered on the second ring. Ramona. I said, voice steadier than I felt. I need you to drop everything and drive to Phoenix, right now. Don't ask questions, don't tell anyone where you're going, and bring your overnight bag. Nolan's life depends on it. Silence. Then, Harlan, you're scaring me. What's happened? I can't explain on the phone. I kept my voice low, checking the hallway for eavesdroppers. Just trust me, Nolan's in ICU after cardiac arrest, and there's something very wrong. Something dangerous. I need you here. Ramona Prescott, 60 years old retired school teacher with silver-streaked hair and a spine of steel, didn't hesitate. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. I'll be there by 3:30. The line went dead. I pocketed the phone and took 3 deep breaths. Then I walked back to the waiting room to sit across from the woman who'd been poisoning my son. Celeste was checking her phone when I entered. The moment she saw me, she quickly switched screens, her thumb moving fast. Practiced. By the time I reached her, she was looking at what appeared to be a news app. But I'd seen the flicker, the guilty micro-expression. She was communicating with someone, probably Marcus Miller, probably discussing their next move now that Nolan had survived. "You were gone a while," she said, concern painting her face like a mask she'd put on that morning. "Are you okay? This must be so hard on you. Let me tell you what it's like to sit across from someone who tried to murder your child. You smile, you nod, you make small talk about weather and hospital coffee. And every second, every breath, you're calculating one wrong word and she knows. One wrong look and the grandchildren are in danger." "Just needed a moment," I said, settling into the plastic chair. "It's not every day your son nearly dies. Have the doctors given you any updates?" "They say he's stable, but still critical." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed no actual tears. "The next 48 hours are crucial. We should get coffee. You look exhausted." "I'm fine here," I said. "Don't want to miss the doctors if they come." She nodded, disappointed. Testing me, I realized. Wanting to get me alone somewhere, she could read my face without witnesses probe whether I suspected anything. We sat in that waiting room for 20 minutes of agonizing small talk. She told me about Nolan's work stress painting him as overworked, underlining the narrative that he'd simply collapsed from exhaustion. Setting up the official story. I played along, asked questions, performed, concerned father, while my mind cataloged every lie. At 11:15, a nurse appeared. "Family can have a brief visit with Mr. Prescott. 5 minutes ICU rules." We followed her through double doors into the critical care unit. The smell hit me first, antiseptic so strong it burned. Then the sounds machines beeping rhythms of life, support monitors, measuring heartbeats, the soft mechanical whoosh of ventilators. Nolan was in Bay 7, pale, unconscious. Tubes snaking from his arms, a breathing tube down his throat, monitors tracking every vital sign. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by all the machinery keeping him alive. My son, 38 years old. A marathon runner reduced to this because the woman standing beside me wanted $900,000. Celeste moved to his bedside, taking his hand with theatrical gentleness. "I'm here, baby," she whispered. "You're going to be okay. Just rest." She stroked his hair, her performance flawless. "I love you so much." Watching her touch Nolan's hand in that ICU room, I've never felt rage like that. Pure, cold, absolute. The same hands that made his coffee every morning, that hugged my grandchildren, that forged his signature on his own death warrant. Those hands were touching my unconscious son with theatrical tenderness. I noticed she positioned herself to partially block the heart monitor. Subtle, probably unconscious. The instinct of someone who didn't want family members getting too close, asking too many medical questions, noticing discrepancies in the story. "We should let him rest," she said after exactly 90 seconds. The nurse said brief visits only. I wanted to stay, wanted to stand guard over my son and never let her near him again. But I couldn't show that instinct. Not yet. "You're right," I said. "We'll come back later." We returned to the waiting room. The hours crawled. Celeste alternated between concerned wife performance and checking her phone obsessively. Every 20 minutes she'd excuse herself. Calls to work, she claimed. But they never lasted more than 30 seconds. Just long enough to send a text, receive a response, coordinate. I matched her performance with my own. Concerned father, exhausted, unsuspecting. I dozed in my chair, or pretended to, while tracking her movements through half-closed eyes. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Ramona. 20 minutes out. I waited 15 more minutes, then stood and stretched. "Celeste, I need to move my truck. I'm in a short-term spot. I'll be back in 15 minutes. She looked up from her phone. "Oh, I can come with you. I could use the fresh air." "No, you stay." I kept my voice casual. "In case the doctors come with updates, I'll be quick." She hesitated, calculating, then nodded. "Okay. Don't be long." I walked out at a normal pace, down the corridor, through the main entrance, into the Arizona heat that felt like liberation after hours in that air-conditioned performance space. Parking lot B was on the west side. I found Ramona's silver Honda Civic parked in the shade engine, still ticking as it cooled. She got out when she saw me, and the relief on her face almost broke my composure. "Harlan, read this first." I handed her the envelope. "Then we'll talk." I watched my sister's face transform as she read. First confusion, her brow furrowing at the toxicology numbers, then disbelief shaking her head at the insurance policies, then horror, her hand flying to her mouth as she absorbed the chart of previous victims. When she reached the text messages, her hands started shaking. How long does it take to read evidence of serial murder? In Ramona's case, 8 minutes. 8 minutes to watch your sister-in-law transform from family member to monster. 8 minutes to understand your nephew's children are living with a killer. "Harlan, this can't be real." Her voice was barely a whisper. Oh my God, she's been poisoning him." "For at least 2 months, maybe longer, and there are 4 other victims, maybe more." She flipped back through the pages, stopping at the 2018 case, at the photo of the woman who looked exactly like Celeste. "This can't be the same person. Can it?" "I don't know. But whether it's Celeste or someone who works with her and Marcus Miller, they've done this before. Successfully. Multiple times." Ramona turned to the final page, the text message printout. Her eyes scanned down, then stopped. She went pale. "The grandchildren, Harlan. Where are Lyra and Beckett right now?" "At the house, their house, with Celeste's belongings and probably some way for Marcus Miller to access them." She looked up from the last page, her face ashen. "Harlan, this text is from this morning, 10:47 a.m. Celeste to Marcus kids, home alone until 5. Window closing." She checked her watch. "It's 3:30. We have 90 minutes. We both started running toward her car. We had 50 minutes to plan a rescue that wouldn't get the children killed." Ramona gripped the steering wheel, engine still running, both of us thinking the same thing. If we walked into that house and Marcus Miller was already there, we were all dead. "Simple story," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I tell Celeste I want to check on the kids, bring them to see their father. You wait outside as backup. If I'm not out in 10 minutes with Lyra and Beckett, you call 911. What if Marcus is already in the house?" Ramona's knuckles were white on the wheel. "Then I improvise. But we can't wait for police. They'd want statements, warrants, hours we don't have. Those kids need to be out of that house before 5 o'clock. She nodded. 10 minutes. If you're not out with those kids in 10 minutes, I'm calling 911 and going in myself. I looked at my sister, 60 years old, retired school teacher, probably hadn't been in a physical confrontation since we were teenagers fighting over the TV remote. But her jaw was set with the same stubborn determination that had gotten her through 30 years of managing rowdy middle schoolers. "Old deal," I said. I walked back through that hospital, through the automatic doors past the reception desk, into the waiting room, where Celeste sat scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, and I delivered my rehearsed line. "Celeste, I'm thinking I should check on Lyra and Beckett. They must be scared not knowing what's happening with their father. Maybe I could bring them here. Let them see Nolan's okay." Her face transformed from distant concentration to warm concern in the space of a heartbeat. She stood, reached into her purse, and pulled out a key ring. "Oh, Dad," she said, using that title for the first time in 5 years of marriage to my son. "That's so thoughtful of you." She pressed the keys into my hand, warm from her pocket. "They're probably worried sick. Tell them Daddy's gonna be fine. The address is programmed in your phone from Christmas, right? Here's what they don't tell you about rescue missions. You don't have time to think. No careful plans, no backup, no certainty. Just a ticking clock, a sister in a Honda, and the knowledge that 2 children are sitting in a house where their stepmother keeps poison in the kitchen. I remember I managed. I'll have them back here within the hour. Take your time." She smiled, perfect, warm, maternal. "Drive safe, and Harlan. Thank you for being here, for being such an amazing grandfather. Nolan's lucky to have you." The woman who poisoned my son was calling me an amazing grandfather and handing me keys to her house. The performance was flawless. The calculation beneath it was terrifying. I walked out before my face could betray what I knew. Ramona had the car idling at the curb. I climbed in, and we peeled out of the parking lot. "She just handed them over," Ramona said, watching me grip the keys. "Too easy." "I know. Either she's supremely confident, or it's a trap. Maybe both." We merged onto the loop 101, heading north into Scottsdale. The Phoenix afternoon heat made the pavement shimmer like water. 4:15, 4:20. Every red light felt like torture. Every car that slowed us down might be the difference between rescue and disaster. Ramona drove with the focused intensity of someone who understood we weren't just picking up grandchildren. We were extracting witnesses from an active crime scene. The neighborhoods got progressively more affluent gated communities, luxury cars and driveways, lawns that required desert-defying irrigation, houses worth millions, lives that looked perfect from the outside, just like Celeste and Nolan's. "Clock's ticking," Ramona said. "We're at 4:23, 37 minutes until 5. I checked the GPS, 2 miles, 5 minutes in traffic. The house was on a quiet cul-de-sac called Saguaro Vista Court. Spanish colonial architecture, terracotta roof, tiles a fountain in the front yard with flowering plants surrounding it. Children's bikes leaned against the porch railing, one pink with streamers, one blue with a basket. A welcome mat that said "Home Sweet Home" in cheerful script. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the mechanical hum of the GPS. We reached the quiet cul-de-sac of Saguaro Vista Court at 4:28 p.m. The property sat there basking in the Scottsdale sun with a deceptive tranquility. To any passerby, it was a masterpiece of suburban architecture, a testament to a successful life. But as I pulled up, those manicured hedges felt like the walls of a fortress designed to keep the truth in, and my grandchildren's bikes on the porch looked like abandoned toys in a ghost story. It looked like every American Dream catalog image, like the set of a family sitcom, like the background of Christmas cards that said, "Blessed beyond measure." It looked nothing like a place where someone had been systematically murdering her husband. Ramona pulled over 2 houses down as planned, engine running, phone in hand. 10 minutes, she said, starting now. I got out and walked toward the house, seeing it now through the lens of horror. This was where Celeste prepared poisoned coffee every morning, where she forged insurance documents at the kitchen table, where she tucked Lyra and Beckett into bed at night and then texted Marcus Miller about dosages and timelines. The perfect house, the perfect lawn, the perfect cover for perfect murder. A neighbor was watering roses 3 houses down. An Amazon delivery truck drove past. Somewhere a dog barked. Normal, suburban, safe, except it wasn't. Everything about the estate was too intentional, too curated. It was the kind of aesthetic perfection that usually hides a crumbling foundation. I realized then that Celeste hadn't just built a home. She had constructed a stage, and every flowering plant in that front yard was a prop to distract us from the slow execution happening behind those double doors. I climbed the 3 steps to the porch, pulled out the keys Celeste had handed me so trustingly, selected what looked like the front door key. Somewhere in there, 2 kids who didn't know their stepmother tried to kill their father. How do you tell children that? How do you explain that the woman who makes their lunches and signs their permission, slips and drives them to soccer practice, has been poisoning their father for insurance money? I slid the key toward the lock. The door swung open before I could turn it. Unlocked. In a neighborhood this wealthy, in a house this expensive, in a city where crime statistics are posted in homeowner newsletters, nobody leaves doors unlocked. I heard it then. A voice from somewhere inside. Male. Deep. Not a child's voice. "I know you're home. We need to talk about your father." My hand froze on the door handle. Every instinct screamed trap, but Lyra and Beckett were in there. And if that was Marcus Miller, if he was already in position, if Celeste had sent me into this, deliberately. Ramona was 2 houses down with her phone. 10 minutes. I had 10 minutes. I stepped inside. I burst through the door, heart hammering, ready to fight, and froze. The male voice I'd heard wasn't Marcus Miller or an intruder. It was coming from the TV where Beckett Prescott, my 9-year-old grandson, sat cross-legged on the carpet playing a video game, completely oblivious to the fact that his grandfather had just prepared to kill someone to save him. "A die villain," the game character shouted. "We need to talk about your father." Beckett mashed buttons on his controller, orange Cheetos dust on his fingers, his face scrunched in concentration. On the couch, Lyra Prescott, 12 years old, with dark hair and eyes too observant for her age, looked up from her phone and saw me standing in the doorway like I'd just run a marathon. "Grandpa," Beckett jumped up, his controller flying. "What are you doing here? Did you come to play with us?" The relief nearly buckled my knees. No Marcus Miller, no immediate threat. Just two kids having a normal Wednesday afternoon eating snacks and playing games. Safe. For now. Is Dad okay? Lyra's voice was quieter than her brother's measured. Mom said he had to have surgery. I forced my breathing to steady my hands to stop shaking. Your dad is doing better. The surgery went well. I thought maybe you two could come visit him at the hospital. Would you like that? Yes. Beckett was already running toward the stairs. I'll get my tablet. Can we bring Dad his favorite candy? Mom says he can't have sugar, but maybe just once. The words hit me like a fist, Mom says. The woman who'd been poisoning their father was managing his diet, controlling what he ate, dictating what was healthy for him. Now that's sweet of you, buddy, I managed. Go grab whatever you want to bring him. Beckett thundered up the stairs, all energy and innocence. But Lyra didn't move. She stayed on the couch watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, like she could see through the performance to the truth underneath. Grandpa, she said quietly, can I talk to you alone? You know what's worse than discovering your daughter-in-law is a murderer? Discovering that your 12-year-old granddaughter has been living in that house sensing something wrong, collecting fragments of evidence in her child's mind, and having no adult believe her intuition. Of course, sweetheart. She led me upstairs to her bedroom, typical pre-teen space with band posters, bookshelves crammed with novels, soccer trophies lined up on a dresser. But when she closed the door and sat on her bed, her expression was decades too old. Grandpa, I need to tell you something about Mom. Her voice was steady, but her hands twisted in her lap. I think I don't know, something's wrong. I sat in her desk chair, every muscle in my body tense. What do you mean, sweetheart? What's wrong? Lyra took a breath. She's been talking to someone on the phone, late at night. She thinks we're asleep, but I hear her. She goes into the garage and talks for like an hour. She says things like soon, and then we'll finally be together, and once this is over. My heart stopped. How long has this been happening? Months, since like last Christmas. She looked at her hands. Who's she talking to, Grandpa? It's not Dad. Dad's always asleep when she makes these calls. Because he was exhausted. Because he was being poisoned. Because his wife was putting digoxin in his morning coffee and calling her accomplice to discuss the murder timeline while her husband slept upstairs dying by degrees. What else have you noticed? I kept my voice gentle, but every word she said was building a case. A child witness. Evidence I could use. Lyra's eyes met mine. Sometimes Mom makes Dad's coffee and then throws it away and makes a new one. She says it's too bitter. But Grandpa, she does it when she doesn't think anyone's watching. Like she's, I don't know, testing something, dosing. She'd been watching Celeste to dose the coffee dispose of failures, prepare fresh cups with the right amount of poison. A 12-year-old had witnessed attempted murder and didn't have the context to understand what she was seeing. Has your mom been different lately? I asked carefully. Acting strange? She makes Dad take vitamins every morning, special ones she orders online. He doesn't like them, but she insists. Lyra's voice dropped lower. And last week I heard her on the phone again. She said, the insurance will cover everything. What insurance, Grandpa? Insurance for what? $900,000. That's what insurance. That's what everything meant, a new life with Marcus Miller, funded by my son's death. How do you tell a child that her mother is trying to kill her father? How do you explain that the woman who makes her breakfast and signs her permission slips as a serial killer? You don't. You get them out first and answer questions later. Lyra, I said, choosing each word with surgical precision. Has your mom ever said or done anything that made you feel unsafe? She shook her head. Not to me. But Grandpa, her eyes filled with tears she'd probably been holding back for months. Is Mom doing something bad? Is that why Dad got sick? I'm not stupid, Grandpa. I know something's wrong. I know you know something. Please just tell me the truth. I wanted to. God, I wanted to gather her in my arms and tell her everything, that her stepmother was a monster, that I was here to save her, that she was right to trust her instincts. But before I could find the words, Beckett's voice called from downstairs. What, Grandpa? There's a car pulling into the driveway. My blood turned to ice. I crossed to Lyra's window and looked down at the street. A silver sedan was pulling into the driveway, sleek, expensive, out of place in this family neighborhood. The driver's door opened. Marcus Miller stepped out. I recognized him from the photo in Dr. Thatcher's file, 45 years old, Caucasian, wearing a polo shirt and khakis like he was just another suburban professional. He reached into his back seat and pulled out what looked like a white pharmacy bag. the kind with prescription staples at the top. He checked his phone, looked at the house, and started walking toward the front door. Lyra was beside me now, peering out the window. "Who's that?" "And I don't know," I lied. "But I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" She nodded, fear replacing confusion in her eyes. "Get your brother. Both of you go into your closet and close the door. Don't make a sound. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Understand? Os fedor, en onti sespan basistat." "Grandpa." "Now, Lyra." She ran. I heard her grabbing Beckett from downstairs, heard his protests turn to frightened compliance as she pulled him up the stairs. Her closet door clicked shut. I looked out the window again. Marcus Miller was on the porch now, reaching for the doorbell. The pharmacy bag swung from his hand, probably containing enough digoxin to finish what Celeste had started. Maybe something worse, something faster. Ramona was 2 houses down with her phone. 10 minutes, we'd said. It had been 6. I had 2 choices: hide and hope he left, or intercept him at the door and prevent him from entering this house where 2 terrified children were hiding in a closet. The doorbell rang. I made my choice and headed downstairs. "Both of you pack a bag, now." I kept my voice calm, but Lyra heard the urgency underneath. Through the window, I watched Marcus Miller's car idle at the curb. He was on his phone arguing with someone. The gestures were angry, frustrated. That call was buying us maybe 3 minutes. I had to find evidence while the kids packed, then get us all out before he came to the door. "Pack clothes for 3 days, I told them. "Favorite toys. Move fast, okay?" Beckett looked confused but excited in adventure with Grandpa. Lyra's eyes held different understanding. She was 12. She'd been living with something wrong for months. She knew this wasn't a game. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "why is that man sitting outside our house?" "Just pack, sweetheart. I'll explain everything once we're safe." She nodded and took Beckett's hand, pulling him toward his room. I heard her keeping her voice light, distracting him with talk about what toys to bring for Dad. I moved fast. Down the hallway to the master bedroom, the space Celeste shared with my son. The door was open. I stepped inside and felt my skin crawl. Let me tell you what you find when you search a serial killer's bedroom: perfection. Everything coordinated, organized, color-coded. Not a hair out of place. Because someone who can methodically poison their spouse for months without detection is someone who controls every detail. The bed was made with hospital corners. Throw pillows arranged just so. Dresser drawers lined with lavender-scented paper. I searched quickly nightstand under the mattress dresser drawers. Nothing obvious. Clothes, jewelry, normal marital detritus. Through the window I checked on Marcus. Still on his phone. Still gesturing. Still buying me time. If she's smart enough to poison someone for months without detection, she's smart enough to hide evidence. Where would I hide a burner phone if I were planning murder? Somewhere accessible but not obvious. Somewhere I could check messages quickly, but where casual searchers wouldn't look. Somewhere that blended into the background of normal life. I entered her walk-in closet. Designer clothes hung in color-coordinated rows. Expensive shoes lined shelves. Everything pristine, everything controlled. The top shelf held hat boxes, the kind wealthy women use for storage. I pulled one down. Empty. Another. Empty. Third one. Behind the hat boxes, pushed to the back corner, a shoebox. Labeled Old Tax Documents 2018 in neat handwriting. 2018, Jennifer Morrison's death year. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside a phone, not new, not old, charged, waiting. I pressed the power button. It lit up, no lock screen, no password protection. Arrogant. Or maybe just confident that nobody would ever find it. The contact list had one entry, M. I opened the text message thread. Months of messages. Hundreds of them. I scrolled, my stomach turning with each line. M in timeline moving up. He's getting suspicious. C. No, he isn't. He trusts me completely. M. What about the kids? C. They're not a problem. They don't know anything. I kept scrolling. Further back. Deeper into the conspiracy. C. Once he's gone, we'll be free. M. Insurance clears in 30 days after death certificate. C. 900,000 split 50-50 like we agreed. M. You sure about the dosage? C. Increase it. Too slow. I want this over by month end. May need to relocate them after. 5 words. 5 words that meant my grandchildren were marked for death. Not by a stranger, by a woman who kissed them goodnight and packed their school lunches. I scrolled further, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. M. Kids asking questions? C. Lyra heard me on phone last night. M. How much did she hear? C, not sure. She's smart, watching me. M, same problem as Morrison's kid. Like, we know how to handle witnesses. My blood turned to ice. They'd killed a child before. Or planned to. Jennifer Morrison had a kid. What happened to that kid after the natural causes cardiac arrest took his mother? I pulled out my own phone and started photographing the screen. Every message. Every piece of evidence. My hands were shaking so badly the photos came out blurred. I steadied myself against the closet wall and tried again. C met a pharmacist named Miller in 2016. Perfect partner. M, you always find the best ones. C, third time's the charm. M, third, you said Morrison was second. C, there was someone before. 2014. Different state. That one was messy. Learned a lot. 4 victims. Maybe 5. My son was supposed to be the latest in a series spanning at least a decade. Before I show you what else those messages revealed, I need you to do something. Comment A, if you think Celeste planned this alone and recruited Miller, or B, if you think they've been partners from the start. Add one short reason so I can see how you're reading the evidence. Please note, what follows includes some adapted details to convey the full scope of this conspiracy, but the core pattern is real. If you're not comfortable with reconstructed elements, this is a good place to pause. The garage door motor ground to life. My heart stopped. She was home, 30 minutes early. I looked at the clock on the phone, 4:40 p.m. Marcus was still outside. The children were upstairs with packed bags, and I was standing in Celeste's closet holding evidence of serial murder. I shoved the phone in my pocket and moved to the bedroom door. Her heels clicked across the garage floor into the kitchen. I heard her set down Key's purse. Normal sounds, domestic sounds. The sounds of someone coming home from running errands, not someone who'd been at a hospital waiting for her husband to die. Mom? Lyra's voice called down from upstairs. Innocent, trusting. You're home early. Just came to grab some things for your father, Celeste called back, then sharper. Harlan, are you still here? I stepped out of the bedroom into the hallway. Yes, I'm here. The kids and I were just... She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at me. Her eyes scanned the hallway, the bedroom door behind me, my face. What are you doing in my bedroom? What do you say when a murderer asks why you're in her bedroom? When she's standing between you and 2 children who just packed bags to escape her? When her accomplice is parked outside and evidence of serial killing is burning in your pocket? I was just using the restroom, I said. The kids' bathroom was occupied. Her eyes narrowed. She started climbing the stairs toward me, each step measured and deliberate. When she reached the top, she was close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same expensive scent that lingered in the closet where I had found her secrets. She looked past me into the bedroom. Her gaze swept across the space, checking, assessing, looking for signs of disturbance. Then her eyes came back to me. The master bathroom is through the bedroom, she said. You would have had to walk all the way through to reach it, past my dresser, past my closet. Her voice was pleasant, her smile was pleasant, but her eyes were calculating. She looked at me, really looked, at my face, my posture, my hands in my pockets. The way I was standing slightly off balance, weight on one leg, the bulge in my right pocket where her phone sat. The mask slipped for just a second. I saw calculation replace confusion, understanding replace suspicion. She knew. Harlan, she said softly, what do you have in your pocket? I smiled, forced every muscle in my face to smile like a man with nothing to hide. My phone, I said, patting my pocket where her burner sat like a grenade. I was looking for a charger for the kids. Beckett's tablet died. The lie came smooth as glass. I pulled my own phone from my other pocket as proof, held it up like evidence at trial. Celeste's eyes stayed on mine, searching, calculating. Her predator instincts were triggered. Something was wrong. Something had shifted in the dynamic between us. But she couldn't prove I was lying without revealing she knew about the second phone, without admitting she had secrets worth hiding. In my closet, her voice was pleasant, conversational. We keep chargers in the kitchen drawer. I thought you might have an extra up here. Sorry for intruding. I gestured at the bedroom. I know this is your private space. A beat of silence. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She was trapped in the same stalemate. I was, both of us knowing, the other was lying, neither able to call it out without exposing ourselves. You want to know what lying to a murderer feels like. Your pulse pounds so hard you're certain she can see it in your neck. Every word feels like walking on glass. One wrong syllable and everything shatters: your grandchildren, your son, your own life. But you keep smiling, keep performing, Keep pretending you're just a concerned father who came to check on family. Mom, Beckett's voice broke the tension. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, backpack on both shoulders, tablet in hand. Grandpa's taking us to see Daddy. We packed everything. Lyra stood behind him, quieter, her observant eyes moving between me and Celeste. Reading the room, sensing the wrongness even if she couldn't name it. Celeste's mask shifted instantly. The predator became concerned mother. That's sweet. She knelt to Beckett's level, smiled warmly. Harlan, you should have asked me first. They have school tomorrow. Mom, why are you home? Lyra's voice was soft but pointed. You said you'd be at the hospital all day. Celeste's smile didn't waver, but I saw calculation flash across her eyes. I just came to grab some things for your father, and it's a good thing I did. I can say goodbye to you both before you go. We moved downstairs. Every step felt choreographed, each of us playing roles in a deadly performance. The children bounced with excitement. Celeste maintained concerned mother composure. I projected grandfather doing a favor normalcy. In the living room, she turned to face me fully. Harlan, I appreciate this, but maybe I should come too. We could all go together. Trap. She wanted to maintain control, keep eyes on me, prevent whatever move she suspected I was planning. I see you limits visitors to 2 at a time, I said. You've been there all day, let me take them. You rest, you look exhausted, Celeste. It was a chess match played with social conventions as pieces. Refusing would reveal her true nature. What loving wife prevents children from seeing their hospitalized father? What concerned stepmother insists on going when she's already spent hours there? The worst part wasn't her suspicion. It was watching her kiss Beckett goodbye, stroke his hair with the same hands that had been poisoning his father for months. The same hands that texts said were ready to relocate him if he became an obstacle. She hugged Lyra, whispered something in her ear about being good for Grandpa. Of course, she said finally. You're right, I am tired. Her smile was perfect. Just bring them back tonight, okay? They need their sleep. Absolutely. She walked us to the front door. I had the children, had the evidence, had a clear path to the car where Ramona waited. Victory should have felt closer. Instead, dread tightened around my chest, because Celeste was agreeing too easily. She handed me the house keys from her purse. In case you need to come back for anything. Through the window, I saw Marcus Miller's car still parked 3 houses down. Celeste saw it too. Her jaw tightened for just a fraction of a second. Take care of them, she said to me, voice low enough the children couldn't hear. They're all I have. The words should have sounded loving. Instead, they hung in the air like a threat, a reminder, a promise. I loaded Beckett and Lyra into Ramona's silver Honda, 2 houses down their backpacks, stuffed with clothes and toys and innocence. Ramona's face was pale hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. You got them, she breathed. Thank God. What happened in there? Drive, I said. Just drive. She pulled away from the curb. I turned in my seat watching through the rear window. Celeste stood in the driveway, phone pressed to her ear. Even from a distance, I could see the urgency in her posture, pacing, gesturing. The performance dropped the moment we were out of immediate sight. Grandpa, Lyra said from the back seat, why was that man following us? I turned. Marcus Miller's silver sedan had pulled out from his parking spot and was maintaining distance behind us. 1 car back, professional, not hiding. What man, honey? Oh, the Mauma Singdi's Bafband. The one who was sitting outside our house. He's behind us now. Ramona's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Silver sedan? That's him. Marcus Miller followed us for exactly 3 blocks. Not pursuing, tracking, making sure we saw him, letting us know we can find you whenever we want. This isn't over. At the 3rd intersection, he turned off, disappeared into suburban traffic like he'd never been there. But the message was clear. Harlan, Ramona's voice was tight. Tell me you got something. Tell me this wasn't for nothing. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket. Evidence of 4 murders, maybe more. Text messages planning Nolan's death, and plans to eliminate the children if they became problems. Oh my God. We need to call the police. Show them this. Get protection for Nolan before... Ramona's phone buzzed in the cup holder. Text message, unknown number. She picked it up, read it. Her face went white. What? I asked. What does it say? She handed me the phone. The message read, touching message, tell Harlan he forgot to return my house keys. I'll need them back when I see him at the hospital tonight. C. She was coming. To the hospital. where Nolan lay vulnerable in ICU, where Dr. Thatcher's protection might not be enough if she had legitimate wife access, where she could finish what she started, and she knew we knew. "What do we do?" Ramona's voice shook. "Go back to the hospital. Call police, run." I looked at the children in the back seat, Beckett playing with his tablet oblivious, Lyra watching me with those two old eyes understanding more than any 12-year-old should. In my pocket, the burner phone felt like it was burning through my jeans. Evidence, confession, proof. But would it be enough to stop a woman who'd been killing for over a decade and never been caught? "Ramona," I said quietly, "exit here. We need to make a call." We didn't go back to the hospital. I made the call on E10 westbound Ramona, driving 85, while Beckett slept in the back seat and Lyra stared out the window with two old eyes. We were running not from danger, but toward the only thing that made sense anymore, getting these kids somewhere. Celeste and Marcus Miller couldn't reach them before police could act. Celeste would be at the hospital by now, looking for us, realizing we weren't coming back, calculating her next move with that cold precision I'd seen in her bedroom. But Nolan had Dr. Thatcher. He had ICU security. He had witnesses and medical staff. The children had only us. "Grandpa," Lyra's voice was small, barely audible over the highway noise. "Is Mom going to jail? Is that why we're running?" I turned in my seat to look at her. 12 years old. Should have been worried about school and friends and whether she'd make the soccer team. Instead, she was asking if her stepmother was a criminal. "Yes, sweetheart. Your mom hurt your dad. Very badly. We need to get you somewhere safe while police help him." I knew. Tears started streaming down her face. I knew something was wrong. Nobody believed me. I told my teacher that Mom was acting weird, and she said all parents go through stress. I told Dad that the vitamins made him feel worse, and he said Mom was just trying to help. Nobody believed me. Watching Lyra cry in that back seat, not because she was scared, but because finally an adult believed what she'd known for months, broke something in me. Children shouldn't have to be detectives in their own homes. They shouldn't have to gather evidence of their parents' crimes. They shouldn't have to live with the knowledge that their intuition was screaming danger and every adult around them was too blind to see it. "I believe you," I said. "And you were right. You were right about everything." Wickenburg appeared through the desert, heat shimmer, 60 miles later. Small town off the main highway, the kind of place people pass through on their way to somewhere else. Perfect. The Route 66 motel sat on the edge of town, 1950s-era roadside relic with faded turquoise paint and a flickering neon sign that read, "Vacancy." Dusty parking lot. No cameras visible. Cash only, I'd bet. Ramona pulled in. "Stay here," she said to me. "Let me handle this." She came back 5 minutes later with 2 keys. Rooms 12 and 14, adjoining. The manager didn't ask questions. The rooms smelled like decades of cigarette smoke masked by industrial cleaner. 2 double beds, each thin floral bedspreads, TV bolted to the dresser. But the doors had deadbolts and chain locks. The windows faced the parking lot where we could see anyone approaching. Good enough. "Lock this door," I told the children, as Ramona settled them into room 12. "Don't open it for anyone except Aunt Ramona or me. Understand?" Beckett nodded, still groggy from his car nap. Lyra's eyes were red but focused. She understood the stakes. I stepped outside into the evening heat. The sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky orange and purple. Beautiful, peaceful, completely at odds with the storm about to break. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Imbolbeats. My name is Harlan Prescott. I need to report an attempted murder in progress. My son Nolan Prescott is a patient at Banner Desert Medical Center in Phoenix, and his wife has been poisoning him with digoxin for insurance money. Silence. Then, "Sir, can you repeat that?" "This is speak, it is rats, it chinoaspin." I repeated it. Added details. The dispatcher's tone shifted from routine to urgent. She transferred me to Phoenix Police Department. They transferred me to homicide. "Detective Mireille Garrison," a woman's voice said, sharp, seasoned. "Mr. Prescott, you're claiming your daughter-in-law has been poisoning your son with digoxin for insurance money. I have her burner phone with text messages to her accomplice Marcus Miller. I have Dr. Conrad Thatcher's evidence file with toxicology reports showing digoxin levels of 3.2 nanograms per milliliter. I have forged insurance policies totaling $900,000. And, detective, there are at least 4 previous victims. Maybe more." Another beat of silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, focused, intense. What did you say the accomplice's name was? Marcus Miller. He's a pharmacist who's been providing the poison and... Where are you right now? Route 66 Motel in Wickenburg. I have my grandchildren with me. They're witnesses. They were in danger. Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming to you. Don't contact anyone, don't move, and don't let those children out of your sight. Do you understand me, Mr. Prescott? Yes. I'll be there in 90 minutes. The line went dead. I sat on the motel steps, adrenaline finally starting to drain, leaving exhaustion in its wake. 70 years old. I'd driven 6 hours, extracted 2 children from a killer's house, fled across county lines, and was now waiting for homicide detectives, while my son lay in a hospital bed, recovering from his wife's attempt to murder him. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought evidence. Record everything. Hello, Mr. Prescott. A male voice. Calm, clinical, cold. My name is Marcus Miller. I believe you took something that doesn't belong to you. A phone. I think we should meet to discuss returning it. Marcus Miller knew what Lyra was wearing, which meant he'd been watching the house, watching my grandchildren. For how long? Days, weeks. How many times had he stood in that driveway planning which child to eliminate first? You're calling to threaten my grandchildren. I've already called the police. I'm calling to negotiate, adult to adult, man to man. His voice never changed pitch. Professional, practiced. Lovely girl Lyra, 12 years old, wearing a blue soccer jersey today. So observant. Sharp mind. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to such an observant child. Every muscle in my body went rigid. If you come near my grandchildren, meet me tomorrow, noon, Scottsdale Desert Park. Bring the phone. We'll resolve this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. You and Celeste have been killing people for insurance money. I have the evidence. The police have the evidence. You're done. Tomorrow, Mr. Prescott, noon. Or we'll have to involve Lyra in the conversation. Your choice. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in my shaking hand, rage and terror warring in my chest. He'd threatened a 12-year-old girl by name, described what she was wearing, made it clear he could find her whenever he wanted. Headlights swept across the parking lot 40 minutes later, an unmarked sedan. 2 people got out. The woman was about 50, gray-streaked hair, pulled back sharp eyes that missed nothing. The man was younger, maybe 30, efficient movements, hand near his holster. Both showed badges. Mr. Prescott, I'm Detective Murray Garrison Phoenix, PD, Homicide. This is Officer Sawyer Blanchard. I handed her Celeste's burner phone and Dr. Thatcher's envelope. She read in silence, scrolled through the text messages, examined the toxicology reports. Her expression never changed, but her grip on the phone tightened. I worked the Jennifer Morrison case in 2018, she said finally. Healthy 32-year-old, sudden cardiac arrest, digoxin toxicity. Her husband collected $1.2 million in life insurance. The pharmacy records showed this same name, Marcus Miller, but we couldn't prove it wasn't coincidence. Couldn't prove connection, couldn't prove anything. You know that moment when you realize justice isn't just about punishment, it's about validation. When a homicide detective tells you she's been chasing the same killers for 6 years and you just gave her the key to solving multiple murders, that's when you know you did the right thing. He just called me, I said. Marcus Miller, threatened my granddaughter by name. Detective Garrison's eyes hardened. That's good. Threatening a child in a recorded investigation. Mr. Prescott, you just handed me enough to arrest them both tonight. She closed the evidence envelope and looked at me with something like respect. We're moving on both suspects tonight, but Mr. Prescott, there's something you should know. When we investigated Morrison in 2018, we found evidence of 2 other deaths before her. With your son, that makes 5 victims. But Marcus Miller's pharmacy records go back 12 years. 5 wasn't the final count. It was just the beginning. Detective Garrison's call came 36 hours later, just when I'd started to fear they'd slipped away. I was watching Beckett color at the motel table, crayons spread across cheap laminate, when my phone buzzed. Mr. Prescott, she said, voice tight with controlled excitement. We've got him, and it's worse than we thought. Marcus Miller isn't just an accomplice, he's the architect. I stepped outside so the children wouldn't hear. The afternoon desert heat hit me like a wall. What do you mean, architect? Miller's pharmacy records show he's been ordering suspicious quantities of digoxin for 12 years. But that's not all. We executed search warrants on his apartment and pharmacy office. Mr. Prescott, we found online profiles where he targeted recent widows and divorcees, dating sites, support groups for grieving women. He wasn't just helping Celeste kill your son. He's been recruiting accomplices and teaching them to murder for over a decade. My legs went weak. I sat on the motel steps, phone pressed to my ear. He recruited her. Celeste was, his student, more like his protege. The text messages show him coaching her through every step, when to increase dosage, how to fake concern, how to forge signatures. He even sent her videos of himself demonstrating the performance of a concerned spouse. He calls himself her teacher. This isn't a crime of passion or opportunity. This is a murder school. 7 men, 7 families, 7 widows who thought they'd lost husbands to natural causes. 7 sets of children who grew up believing their fathers had weak hearts. All lies, all murder, all for money. I asked, how many victims? We've confirmed 7 deaths directly linked to Miller's pharmacy records. All healthy men between 32 and 55. All had substantial life insurance policies. All died of what was labeled sudden cardiac arrest. The wives collected payouts ranging from $800,000 to $1.4 million, and then they disappeared or remarried within a year. $7 million. They've been killing people for $7 million. At least, and Mr. Prescott, Jennifer Morrison's husband in 2018, the one who collected the insurance that was Marcus Miller using a false identity. He didn't just provide the poison. He posed as the grieving widower, collected the payout, and moved on. We're checking if he did that in other cases too. I couldn't breathe. The scope of it was overwhelming. Not just serial murder, serial identity theft, serial insurance fraud. A complete criminal enterprise built on killing people and stealing their lives. Your son would have been number 8, Garrison said quietly. Confirm number 8, but we think there are more we haven't found yet. Here's what terrifies me about serial killers: they evolve. Marcus Miller didn't start by recruiting accomplices and teaching murder. He probably started with one victim, learned from it, refined his method, and turned it into a business. Evil doesn't start evil. It practices. When, I asked, when did you arrest them? Yesterday morning, June 18th, coordinated operation. Miller was taken into custody at Desert Sunrise Pharmacy while filling a prescription. In his coat pocket, we found another burner phone. 2 other women on that phone, Mr. Prescott. 2 more marks he was grooming. We may have stopped 3 murders in progress. Relief flooded through me, but it was cold relief, bitter, because for every life saved, 7 were already gone. And Celeste, Garrison's voice hardened, arrested at Banner Desert Medical Center. Security footage shows her accessing a supply closet, taking a syringe, and approaching your son's ICU room. Doctor, Thatcher had flagged her as restricted visitor, but she used her wife credentials to get past the front desk. We got there 30 seconds before she reached his IV line. 30 seconds? My son came 30 seconds from being murdered in a hospital bed. She was going to finish it, I said, with a hospital full of witnesses and security cameras, which tells you how desperate she was, or how confident. When we arrested her, she was crying, saying she just wanted to see her husband, that she didn't understand why Dr. Thatcher had restricted her access. The performance, always the performance. She's lawyered up immediately, Garrison continued. And Mr. Prescott, I need to prepare you for this. Her defense team is already building a narrative that she was Miller's victim. A manipulated, abused woman under psychological control of a master predator. Battered woman syndrome. Coercion. But the texts, she was enthusiastic. She talked about the kids as obstacles. I know. I've read every message. She was a willing, eager participant who discussed murdering children to cover her tracks. But she's performing devastated victim beautifully in interrogation. Crying, claiming she loved Nolan, saying Miller threatened her children if she didn't comply. Her lawyers are calling the texts evidence of her fear, not her guilt. How does someone stand in an interrogation room, caught red-handed with a syringe trying to finish murdering her husband, and convince people she's the victim by being a better actress than anyone gives her credit for, by understanding that juries want to believe women can't be monsters? Will it work? I asked. Will a jury believe her? Not if your son wakes up and testifies. His voice, the actual victim saying she poisoned him, that he trusted her, that she betrayed him, will break through her performance. We need him conscious and coherent before trial. When does he wake up? Dr. Thatcher says the digoxin is clearing his system, Could be days, could be a week. But he's stable now, improving. The fact that he survived this long means his heart is strong enough to recover. I let that sink in. Nolan was going to live, was going to wake up, was going to have to face the reality that his wife of 5 years had been systematically murdering him. Detective, when can I see him? Now. Both suspects are in custody. The threat is neutralized. You can bring the children back to Phoenix. But Mr. Prescott... She paused. I heard papers rustling in the background. There's one more thing. We found a journal in Miller's apartment. It's partially coded, written in medical shorthand mixed with what looks like coded medical shorthand. We've brought in translators and cryptographers. We've only decrypted about 30% so far, but... Another pause. The journal goes back 20 years. It has 19 entries. 19 names, dates, insurance amounts. The world tilted. We think your son was supposed to be victim number 20. 19 families, 19 murders, 7 confirmed, 12 more suspected. And somewhere in a Phoenix jail cell, Marcus Miller was sitting with his lawyer, knowing most of those 12 could never be proven. Mr. Prescott, are you there? I'm here. We're expanding the investigation across multiple states, reopening cold cases, interviewing families. This is going to get bigger before it's over. But I wanted you to know what you did getting that evidence protecting those children. You didn't just save your son. You broke open the biggest serial murder conspiracy I've seen in 20 years with Phoenix PD. I should have felt victorious, should have felt proud. Instead, I just felt tired. Thank you, Detective. When can we come back to Phoenix? Anytime. I'll have Officer Blanchard meet you at the hospital. Extra security until Miller and Celeste are formally arraigned. The line went dead. I sat on those motel steps, phone in my hand, staring at the desert highway stretching to the horizon. Inside, Beckett was coloring. Lyra was reading. Ramona was probably making coffee. Normal things, safe things. But 19 families would never be normal again. 19 sets of children had lost fathers to a killer who smiled and filled prescriptions and called himself a teacher. And I had to figure out how to tell my grandchildren that justice had been served. Even though the woman who tried to kill their father was performing victim so convincingly that she might escape the punishment she deserved. The nurse said Nolan was awake and could take calls. My hand shook, dialing the hospital number, relief flooding through me. My son was conscious, breathing on his own, alive. But when his voice came through the line 3 days after the arrests, it wasn't gratitude I heard. It was rage. "Oi, Dad," he said, voice hoarse from the breathing tube they had just removed. "Why the hell did you have my wife arrested?" The words hit like a physical blow. "Son, listen to me." "No, you listen. You never liked Celeste. From day one, you made that clear. And now you're using my medical crisis to break up my marriage. She loves me, Dad. She's been at the hospital every single day worried sick, and you had her arrested. It's tor to see Nolan, she was poisoning you. We have evidence, texts, insurance policies, a burner phone where she and Marcus Miller planned. I don't want to hear your conspiracy theories." His voice was getting stronger, angrier. "Celeste would never hurt me. Whatever you think you found, you're wrong or you're lying. I don't know which is worse." "I'm not lying. Dr. Thatcher found digoxin in your bloodstream. Os, emwoas. Doctors make mistakes. Tests get contaminated. And you know what? I think you've been waiting for an excuse to destroy my marriage since the day I proposed. Well, congratulations, Dad. You win. Don't call me again until you're ready to apologize to my wife." The line went dead. I sat there in the motel room, phone in my hand, feeling like I'd been gutted. Ramona looked up from her book, saw my face, and came to sit beside me. "He doesn't believe me," I said. "He thinks I made it up. Let me tell you about male victim shame. It's not about stupidity or weakness. It's about a lifetime of messages saying men can't be manipulated by women, can't be vulnerable, can't be victims. When that worldview collides with reality, denial is the only shield that keeps a man's identity intact. He's a shamed Harlan." Ramona's voice was gentle but firm. "Men are taught they can't be victims, especially not of women. Admitting she poisoned him means admitting he was weak, fooled, helpless. That his masculine intuition failed him. That he trusted the wrong person and almost died for it. He'd rather believe I'm the villain than accept she tried to kill him. Right now, yes, because you being wrong is painful but manageable. Her being a murderer is unbearable. Give him time. The truth will break through. It always does. But time felt like torture. 5 days passed. June 19th, 2021, 22:23. Each morning, I woke up hoping my phone would ring with Nolan's voice apologizing, asking questions wanting to know more. Each night I went to bed with silence. I called Detective Garrison daily for updates. The case was solid. The district attorney was confident. Both suspects remained in custody. But my son remained in denial. Lyra asked every day if she could call her father. Every day I told her, no, he wasn't ready, he needed time. On June 23rd, she stopped asking and started demanding. Grandpa, I need to talk to Dad. He needs to hear from me. Sweetheart, he's not ready. He doesn't believe what happened. He'll believe me. Her 12-year-old face was set with determination that looked decades older. I lived there. I saw things. I heard things. Mom doesn't know how much I know. But Dad will listen to me. Please, Grandpa. Those 5 days felt like years. Every day I didn't hear from my son was another day he was trapped in denial, rewriting history to make himself the hero instead of the victim. And all I could do was wait and trust that truth is stronger than ego. I handed Lyra my phone. She went into the bathroom and closed the door. I heard her voice quiet at first, then urgent, then something that sounded like crying. 30 minutes passed. When she emerged, her eyes were red, but her expression was calm. What did you tell him? I asked. Everything I saw, everything I heard, everything Mom did that made me scared. She handed back my phone. Dad needs to think, but he heard me. That night, I barely slept. Neither did Ramona. We sat up playing cards with Beckett, distracting him from questions about when we could go home, when he could see his dad, why everything felt wrong. At 2:47 a.m. on June 24th, my phone rang. Dad! Nolan's voice was broken raw, nothing like the angry man who'd hung up on me 6 days ago. Dad, I'm so sorry. I sat up fully awake instantly. Son, you saved my life, and I accused you of lying. I called you a liar. I defended her. He was crying now, really crying. Lyra told me everything, things I didn't know, things I should have seen. And Detective Garrison brought me the evidence this afternoon. I spent 8 hours reading those text messages, every single one. You don't need to apologize. You were the victim. The shame isn't yours to carry. She was killing me. His voice cracked. For months, every morning she made my coffee and smiled and kissed me goodbye. And every morning, she was putting poison in my cup. I told myself I was just stressed, just tired, just working too hard. She convinced me it was all in my head, and I believed her dad. I believed her over my own body. What does it take to break through denial? In Nolan's case, it wasn't evidence or police reports or his father's word. It was his 12-year-old daughter telling him she'd been scared for months. Children have a way of cutting through lies, even the lies we tell ourselves. What kind of fool does that make me? He asked. The kind who loved someone and trusted them? That's not foolish, Nolan. That's human. She's the monster, not you. We talked for an hour. He asked questions I'd been waiting to answer. He cried. I cried. He apologized again, and I told him to stop apologizing. Finally, as dawn was breaking over the desert, he said, Dad, I need to see it all, with my own eyes. The burner phone, the texts, the insurance policies, Dr. Thatcher's medical records. I can't testify against her until I've processed the full scope of what she did. I need to see what she wrote, what she planned, all of it. I'll bring everything. The detective has copies, but I kept the originals. You should see them. Tomorrow, can you come tomorrow? I need to look her betrayal in the eye before I can move forward. We'll be there, me, Ramona, and the kids. They've been asking about you. His breath caught. The kids! Dad, are they okay? Lyra sounded so grown up on the phone. Too grown up. She was talking about things no 12-year-old should understand. They're safe. They're with me. And they're stronger than you know. Tell them I love them. Tell them their dad was stupid, but he's learning. You weren't stupid. You were trusting. There's a difference. We were about to hang up when he said one more thing that made my blood run cold. Dad, when Lyra called me yesterday, she said something strange. Something I can't stop thinking about. She said that a few weeks ago, Mom told her and Beckett that if anything ever happened to me, they'd get to go live with a nice new family. She said it like it was a vacation. Like it was a good thing. My granddaughter had been told she was disposable. My son looked like a ghost. 10 days in, ICU and rehab had stripped 30 pounds off his marathon runner frame, leaving him hollow-cheeked and pale. But it was his eyes that broke me. They held the look of someone who'd seen the monster under the bed and realized it had been sleeping beside him for 5 years. "Dad." His voice was hoarse damage from the breathing tube. "You came." Of course I came. I pulled the visitor chair close, fighting the urge to inventory every visible sign of damage: the IV line, the heart monitor tracking beats that had stopped twice, the pallor that spoke of how close death had come. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "Dad, I'm sorry for what I said on the phone, for not believing you, for defending her when you were trying to save my life." "Stop." I reached for his hand. It was cold thin, the hand of someone who'd been systematically poisoned for months. "You were the victim. You don't apologize for being poisoned. You don't apologize for trusting someone you loved." "I need to see it." His eyes went to the manila envelope on the bedside table. "Everything. I need to understand how I didn't know, how I lived with her and didn't see what she was doing." There's a particular silence that fills a room when a man confronts proof of his own murder. Not shock, not denial, just processing. Watching every memory, every moment, every tender gesture get rewritten as manipulation. I picked up the envelope, the same one Dr. Thatcher had given me, and placed it in Nolan's lap. "This first page is your toxicology from June 15th, the digoxin level that should have killed you." He opened the envelope with shaking hands. I explained each document before he looked at it, giving him time to prepare. "I never took digoxin." His finger traced the highlighted number, 3.2 nanograms per milliliter. "I've never had heart problems." "How?" "She put it in your coffee, every morning for at least 8 weeks, maybe longer." He turned the page, forged prescriptions with his signature, his name in handwriting that looked like his but wasn't. Medical authorizations he'd never signed, pharmacy records showing digoxin pickup dates that matched mornings he'd felt particularly terrible. Next are the insurance policies. 3 policies, 300,000, 350,000, 250,000, all filed within 11 months, all listing Celeste Whitfield as sole beneficiary, all with forged signatures. "I never bought life insurance beyond my work policy," he said. "She told me that covered us, that we didn't need more because we were young and healthy. She forged your signature on all 3. You would never have known unless you died, and she filed claims." He kept reading 6 ER visit records dates. I remembered him mentioning casually over phone calls. February 15th, March 3rd, March 28th, April 14th, May 2nd, May 23rd, each one documenting symptoms: chest pain, irregular heartbeat, dizziness, nausea. "You told me about these," I said. "I asked if you were okay. You said Celeste was taking good care of you." His hands tightened on the papers. Then he reached the text messages. Printouts of conversations between Celeste and Marcus Miller, dated back to November last year. I watched his face as he read. Watched recognition, then comprehension, then devastation cycle through his expression. He read one aloud, voice breaking, "Once he's gone, we'll be free. We can be together, just a few more weeks." He looked at me. "She wrote that. About me dying. She was counting down the days. You know what's worse than being poisoned? Reading the texts where your wife discusses you in past tense, where she plans your funeral while you're still breathing, where she casually mentions your children as logistical problems to be solved. That's not just murder, that's erasure." Nolan didn't speak for 15 minutes, just kept turning pages, reading, absorbing. I watched him discover each piece of his attempted murder, the timeline Marcus Miller provided for optimal dosage escalation, the discussion of which visits to encourage and which to discourage, the backup plan if he got suspicious. Then he reached the final pages, the messages about Lyra and Beckett. What about the kids? C, they're obstacles, but manageable. Same solution as Morrison's kid. C, if necessary, they're young, easier to relocate. The envelope fell from his lap. Papers scattered across the hospital blanket. Nolan folded forward, crying quietly with the exhaustion of someone whose entire reality had been rewritten. I moved to the edge of the bed and pulled my son into my arms. For the first time since he was a child, since before masculine pride and adult performance became armor, he let himself be held without resistance. His shoulders shook. I felt his tears soaking through my shirt. "She made me coffee every morning," he said into my shoulder. "Told me she loved me, kissed the kids goodnight, put poison in my cup and smiled while I drank it." "I know. I'm so sorry you had to see this, but you needed to know the truth." My kids. He pulled back, eyes red. Dad, she was going to kill my kids, Lyra and Beckett. She told them they'd get a new family, like they were disposable. They're safe. They're with Ramona at the hotel. They're safe, and they know you love them. We sat in silence for several minutes. The monitors beeped. The rehab center hummed with distant activity. My son processed the unprocessable. When he finally spoke again, his voice had changed. Grief had crystallized into something harder, clearer. I'll testify. Against Celeste and Marcus Miller. I'll tell the court everything. Every coffee she made, every ER visit she dismissed, every time she convinced me I was just stressed. Are you sure the defense will try to break you? They'll make it about shame about being fooled? Oh, im sesbind, awaxt. Let them try. His jaw set with determination I hadn't seen in years. My daughter was living in a house with a woman planning to murder her. My son was being groomed to accept his father's death as normal. I won't let shame protect a killer. When does a victim become a survivor? When does shame transform into strength? For Nolan, it was the moment he chose to testify. Not for himself, for Lyra and Beckett. Because the strongest thing a man can do is stand in front of his children and say, this happened to me and I'm not ashamed. I started gathering the scattered evidence pages. Nolan stopped me. Dad, wait. There's something else. Something I remembered last night but didn't want to say on the phone. I looked up. His face had gone pale again. 2 months ago, Celeste took out life insurance policies on Lyra and Beckett. She said it was standard parental planning, $500,000 each. I signed the papers because she said it was responsible. But now, his voice trailed off. The monster wasn't done hunting. By mid-July, Nolan had gained back 15 pounds and could walk without assistance, but he couldn't go home. Not to the Scottsdale house where Celeste had poisoned his coffee every morning. That house wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene painted in suburban colors. He sat in my ranch living room on July 5th, divorce papers spread across the coffee table, looking at the life he needed to dismantle. Medical leave from his engineering job. No permanent address. 2 children who'd witnessed their stepmother's arrest. 38 years old and starting over from nothing. I can't go back there, Dad. His voice was steadier than it had been weeks ago, but the trauma ran deeper than physical recovery. Every time I close my eyes, I see that kitchen. Her making coffee. Smiling at me while she put poison in my cup. Then don't go back. Stay here. The kids need family, not geography. Here's what they don't tell you about rebuilding after trauma. You can't bring anything from the old life. Not furniture, not toys, not memories. Everything is contaminated by association. You start with empty rooms and try to fill them with something that doesn't remind you of the person who tried to kill you. 3 days later, I showed Nolan the for sale sign on the townhouse down the road. 3 bedrooms, small yard, quarter-mile from my ranch. Truth or consequences wasn't Phoenix. No tech jobs, no marathon running clubs, no life he'd built. But it was safe, unknown. A place where nobody knew his story. It feels like running, he said, staring at the property. Like I'm letting her win by leaving. It's called survival. There's a difference. Lyra appeared in the doorway behind us, quiet as always, listening to conversations adults thought were private. Dad, she said, 12 years old with eyes that had seen too much. I don't want to go back to that house. Ever. Please. That decided it. By July 20, paperwork was complete. The townhouse cost $185,000, paid in cash from Nolan's insurance settlement, ironically from a legitimate work policy he'd actually signed. The same money Celeste had planned to collect from his death instead financed his new life. Ramona helped with the move. New furniture from discount stores, new beds that had never been in the Scottsdale house, new kitchen table where no one had ever been poisoned. Beckett got his own room for the first time 9 years old, and finally space that was just his. Lyra chose the bedroom with the window facing east where she could see sunrise over the desert. It should have felt like victory. Instead, grief hung over everything. Grandpa, why can't we bring our toys from the old house? Beckett asked, carrying a box of brand new action figures Ramona had bought. We'll get you better ones, buddy. This is a fresh start. Later, Nolan pulled me aside. Everything from that house feels poisoned. Even the kids' stuffed animals. Is that crazy? No, it's survival instinct. Trust it. The nightmares started on July 26th. Lyra woke screaming about locked doors and trapped rooms. Beckett had recurring dreams where his mother's face morphed into something monstrous. Nolan, still physically weak and emotionally gutted, couldn't comfort them while fighting his own demons. He called me at 2 a.m. that first night, voice breaking. "Dad, I can't do this. Lyra won't stop crying and Beckett won't let me leave his room. I don't know how to help them." "You're not supposed to do it alone. I'm coming over." I found all three of them in Beckett's room. Nolan sitting on the floor between twin beds, one child on each side, all three exhausted and terrified. Lyra looked at me with red eyes. "Grandpa, what if Mom comes back? What if she gets out of jail and finds us?" "She won't. She's in custody. She can't hurt you. But if anything ever threatens you again, I'll be here. Your dad will be here. Aunt Ramona will be here. You're never alone." The next morning, I showed up at 6 a.m. with hiking boots. "Both of you, get dressed. We're going for a walk." I took them into the desert that surrounded Truth or Consequences, vast open space where you could see threats coming from miles away, where the landscape was harsh but honest, where survival was visible in every plant that grew from rocks. Watching Lyra sleep through the night for the first time in weeks, no screaming, no nightmares, just peaceful breathing. I understood that healing isn't a destination, it's a series of small victories. One night of sleep, one smile, one morning without fear. That's how you rebuild a life. I taught them to identify plants. "See that cactus? That's a prickly pear. Looks dangerous, right? But it makes the sweetest fruit. Sometimes the hardest things produce the best results." Lyra stopped walking. "Are you talking about us, Grandpa? Are we the cactus? You're the fruit, sweetheart, sweet and strong and surviving." We went every morning, watched sunrise paint the mountains gold, tracked rabbit prints in sand, found fossils embedded in rock from when this desert was ocean floor. Slowly, painfully slowly, they started healing. Lyra slept through the night by July 28th. Beckett laughed at breakfast on July 30th. Nolan stopped calling me at 2 a.m. because he could handle the nightmares himself. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't complete, but it was progress. On July 31st, as we finished a sunset hike, Lyra turned to me with two old eyes that had seen her stepmother arrested. "Grandpa, Detective Garrison called Dad. She said the trial starts in September. Dad has to testify." She paused, kicking at desert sand with the hiking boots I'd bought her. "Does that mean we have to see her? Do Beckett and I have to go to court?" On the maïs. The healing had barely begun, and already the past was pulling them back. Detective Garrison called on August 10th with 3 words that changed everything. "We found batches." The forensic lab had matched digoxin lot numbers across 7 deaths spanning 12 years, all filled by Marcus Miller at different Phoenix Walgreens locations. All sourced from the same manufacturer during narrow time windows. The children were still asleep in the back bedrooms of our Truth or Consequences home. Through the kitchen window, the desert stretched empty and clean under morning light. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear and listened as Garrison walked me through what the lab techs had discovered: batch MC47822, MC51903, MC58744. Numbers that became death sentences when Miller diverted them into fraudulent prescriptions. "We pulled every prescription Miller ever filled," Garrison continued. "Cross-referenced with death certificates in Maricopa County. 7 confirmed matches. Digoxin levels between 2.8 and 4. 1 nanogram per milliliter. All ruled natural causes at the time. All with life insurance policies filed within 18 months of death." I asked how many total victims. 7 families destroyed, 7 lives stolen, 7 sets of children left without fathers. "The pharmacy records suggest 19, she said quietly. Miller kept a backup system, code names, dosage schedules, something he called tester protocols. "We're contacting families now." 19. I set my coffee down because my hands had started shaking. 19 men poisoned slowly, systematically, while their wives played the role of devoted caregiver. 2 weeks later, Garrison arrived with a laptop and a subpoena. The defense had demanded full discovery, and the prosecution needed video depositions from key witnesses before trial. David Morrison, 41 systems analyst from Tempe, widower of Jennifer Morrison. Victim number 3 had agreed to testify via a secure video feed. His wife died in 2018. The police closed it as natural causes within a week. We set up in my living room, Garrison positioning the laptop on the coffee table, while I sat on the couch with a notepad. The screen flickered, and Morrison's face appeared gaunt, hollow-eyed, wearing the permanent exhaustion of someone who'd spent 5 years believing he'd failed to save his wife. "Mr. Morrison," Garrison began, "can you describe your interactions with Marcus Miller?" Morrison's voice was flat-drained. He called himself a medication consultant, said Jennifer's new insurance plan required specialty pharmacy services for her heart medication. He delivered personally, every 2 weeks, sometimes weekly. Always had a story about why the prescription needed adjustment. "Did he ever discuss payment?" A long pause. Morrison's jaw tightened. "After Jennifer died, he came to the house. Said he'd helped her manage her condition discreetly because she was embarrassed about the heart issues. Asked if I wanted to honor her memory by making a donation to his pharmaceutical access charity. Suggested 10% of the insurance payout would be appropriate." That was the moment the prosecution's case shifted from conspiracy to organized crime. Miller wasn't just a partner, he was running a tiered operation. Some accomplices like Celeste worked on commission-splitting insurance payouts. Others paid upfront fees, a pharmaceutical serial killer with franchise protocols. Garrison leaned forward. "Did you make that donation?" "I gave him $60,000, Morrison whispered. "I thought I was honoring my wife. I was paying her murderer." September and October blurred into a series of depositions and evidence reviews. Nolan gave 3 separate testimonies, his voice growing steadier, each time his body slowly rebuilding strength on desert walks and home-cooked meals. The children stayed carefully separate from the legal proceedings, though I caught Lyra reading news articles when she thought I wasn't watching. She knew more than a 12-year-old should about poison and premeditation and victim impact statements. November brought the evidence hearing. Judge Hartwell ruled that all pharmacy records, forensic batch analysis, Morrison's testimony, and the coded journal were admissible. Celeste's defense attorney argued for victim status, claimed she'd been manipulated by Miller, groomed into participation, coerced through threats. The judge wasn't buying it. Text messages between Celeste and Miller showed clear planning, financial negotiations, discussions of the next one, and expanding the network. Trial date set for December 4th, 2023. Maricopa County Superior Court, Judge Patricia Reyes presiding. The prosecution promised a case so airtight that both defendants would spend life in prison. Garrison called again on November 18th. I was making dinner when my phone buzzed her name, lighting up the screen with that particular weight that meant bad news. "The defense is calling Lyra as a hostile witness," she said without preamble. "They're claiming Celeste was a loving mother, that Lyra's statement was coached by you. They want to cross-examine her on the stand, in front of the jury, in front of Celeste." I stopped stirring the pot of chili. Through the kitchen window, I could see Lyra on the back porch reading in the last of the afternoon sun, finally looking like a child again, after months of living with adult horrors. "We can fight it," Garrison continued, "but the judge may allow it. She's a material witness. She observed the poisoning firsthand. Her testimony is crucial. She's 12 years old. I know, but the defense is arguing that without her cross-examination, Celeste's rights are violated. They're going to put your granddaughter on trial to save a serial killer." Celeste sat 15 feet away from me in that courtroom, wearing a pale blue dress that made her look young and vulnerable, the same performance she'd given at the hospital. But I'd seen her text messages. I'd read how she discussed my grandchildren as obstacles. So when she glanced at Nolan with tears in her eyes, playing the heartbroken wife, I didn't see a victim. I saw a predator in costume. The courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows, cameras stationed at strategic angles. Victims' families lined the gallery. I recognized David Morrison in the third row, his face hollow, with the weight of 5 years spent mourning a wife he didn't know was murdered. Marcus Miller sat at the defense table to the left in a navy suit that made him look like a respectable professional instead of the architect of 19 deaths. Lyra gripped my hand so hard I felt her nails digging into my palm. She was 12 years old, sitting in a courtroom, staring at the woman who'd planned to kill her. Beckett pressed against Ramona on my other side, his 9-year-old face trying to look brave. Nolan sat beside me, spine straight, refusing to look at Celeste, even when she turned her tear-streaked face toward him. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Patricia Reyes, presiding. The state of Arizona versus Celeste Whitfield and Marcus Miller. Judge Reyes was a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair, and the no-nonsense bearing of someone who'd seen every courtroom manipulation. She surveyed the packed gallery, then nodded to the prosecution. Lyra whispered beside me, her voice trembling. Grandpa, she's looking at us. Why is she smiling? I kept my voice quiet and steady. She's performing for the jury. Don't look at her. Look at me. The lead prosecutor stood a woman in her early 40s named Angela Reeves, with sharp eyes and a voice that could fill a room without shouting. This is not a crime of passion, she began. This is industrial-scale murder, disguised as domestic tragedy. Marcus Miller turned serial killing into a business model, and Celeste Whitfield was his willing accomplice in exchange for $450,000. She moved to the evidence board, where Nolan's before and after photos were displayed side by side. On the left, my son at the finish line of a marathon, lean and healthy. On the right, my son in the ICU, gaunt and hollowed out, 35 pounds lighter tubes and monitors keeping him alive. You want to know what justice looks like? It's watching the woman who poisoned your son sit 15 feet away performing grief for strangers while you hold the grandchildren she planned to murder. Justice isn't satisfaction, it's endurance. For 8 weeks, Prosecutor Reeves continued. Celeste Whitfield made her husband coffee every morning, kissed him goodbye, tucked his children into bed, all while systematically poisoning him to death with digoxin, a cardiac drug that mimics heart failure in healthy victims. She detailed the 6 emergency room visits between February and June, each one documenting Nolan's worsening symptoms: chest pain, arrhythmia, dizziness, muscle weakness. Doctors had diagnosed stress and overwork because they had no reason to suspect poison. And when those children, 12-year-old Lyra and 9-year-old Beckett, started asking questions, the prosecutor said, pulling up text messages on the screen, "The evidence shows Celeste and Miller discussing how to eliminate witnesses. These defendants planned to murder children to cover their tracks." Beside me, Lyra's breathing quickened. I put my arm around her shoulders and felt her trembling. The defense attorney for Celeste rose for his opening statement. His name was Richard Calloway, a man in his 60s with perfectly styled silver hair and a voice like warm honey. "My client is a victim here," he announced. "Marcus Miller is a master manipulator who preyed on a vulnerable woman, threatened her children, and forced her participation through psychological terrorism." I felt rage building in my chest, hot and tight. Calloway continued, "And the man who started this witch hunt, Harlan Prescott, a father-in-law who admitted he never liked Celeste, who illegally broke into her home, stole her property, and coached his granddaughter to lie. This is not justice. This is vendetta dressed as prosecution." The defense attorney called me a vindictive father-in-law who manufactured evidence. Never mind that I have her burner phone with murder plot texts. Never mind that my son nearly died. In their story, I'm the villain. That's how defense works make the rescuer into the criminal. Over the next 4 days, the prosecution called expert witnesses. Dr. Conrad Thatcher took the stand and testified with the gravity of someone who'd made an impossible choice to report a crime. "I've been a cardiac surgeon for 30 years, he said. "Nolan Prescott's case was wrong. When I saw digoxin 3.2 in a patient never prescribed digoxin, I knew someone was poisoning him." A forensic toxicologist followed, explaining how batch D4782 was ordered by Marcus Miller's pharmacy on April 3rd, and how that exact chemical signature was found in Nolan's bloodstream on June 15th. "This is not coincidence," she stated firmly. "This is direct evidence of poisoning from that specific batch." On December 8th, the prosecution called Sarah Morrison to the stand. She was the sister of Jennifer Morrison, a 32-year-old woman who died in 2018 of sudden cardiac arrest that was ruled natural causes. "My sister was healthy," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "She ran 5Ks. She had no heart problems. Then suddenly at 32, her heart stopped." Prosecutor Reeves asked, "What did you notice when you visited your sister 3 weeks before her death?" Sarah's hands trembled in her lap. "She made me coffee. It tasted bitter wrong. When I asked, she said her husband had switched to a new blend he got from his pharmacist friend. That pharmacist friend was Marcus Miller." When Sarah Morrison described tasting bitter coffee at her sister's house 3 weeks before Jennifer died, I watched 2 jurors start crying. Because that detail, that tiny dismissible detail, is what every victim's family remembers. The warning sign we all missed while someone we loved was being murdered. The courtroom was silent except for Sarah's quiet sobbing. Across the aisle, Celeste stared straight ahead, her face perfectly composed. Marcus Miller wrote notes on a legal pad as if this were a business meeting. When court adjourned that afternoon, Prosecutor Reeves found us in the hallway. "We're calling Nolan tomorrow morning," she said then, "Lyra in the afternoon. The defense is going to attack both of them." She looked at my son, then my granddaughter. They're going to try to break you both. Are you ready? Nolan squeezed Lyra's hand. Neither of them looked ready for what was coming. My son raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth about how his wife tried to murder him. His voice didn't shake. He'd lost that privilege months ago when he woke up in ICU and learned that love and poison had been served in the same cup every morning. The courtroom was quieter than it had been during expert testimony. Everyone leaned forward as Prosecutor Reeves approached the witness stand. Mr. Prescott, when you married Celeste in March 2022, did you have any reason to suspect she wished you harm? Nolan's answer was simple, none. I loved her. I trusted her with my life, literally. He described meeting Celeste 2 years earlier at a hospital charity event. She'd seemed perfect attentive with Lyra, and Beckett interested in his work, supportive of his marathon training. They married within 8 months. He gave her full access to household finances, trusted her with medical decisions, never questioned her devotion. Who prepared your coffee every morning? Celeste, she insisted. Said it was her way of taking care of me. I thought it was love. Across the courtroom, Celeste dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The performance continued even as my son detailed how she'd slowly murdered him. Nolan testified about the symptoms starting in April. Exhaustion that left him unable to finish his morning runs. Irregular heartbeat that felt like his chest was collapsing. The first ER visit where doctors found nothing conclusive. Celeste had been there holding his hand, making his coffee stronger to help with the fatigue. By June, Nolan said I could barely get out of bed. But Celeste kept saying it was stress, kept making me coffee, kept telling me to trust her. And I did. I trusted the person who was killing me. He described 6 emergency room visits. 6 times Celeste played the concerned wife while administering more poison when they returned home. The June 15th collapse that finally brought the truth. When your father first told you about the evidence, what was your reaction? Nolan looked directly at the jury. I didn't believe him. I defended her. I called my father a liar because accepting the truth meant accepting that I'd been that blind, that foolish, that easily murdered. Here's what testifying as a male victim looks like: you stand in front of strangers and admit your wife poisoned you for months and you didn't notice. You admit you trusted someone who was murdering you. You admit you were fooled, and every word feels like confessing weakness, even though you're the victim. That admission shifted something in the courtroom. 2 jurors nodded slightly. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. The defense attorney rose for cross-examination. Richard Calloway's voice dripped with skepticism. Mr. Prescott, isn't it true you were having financial difficulties and saw these insurance policies as an opportunity for fraud? No, I never signed those policies. I never knew they existed until my father showed me the forgeries. Calloway pressed harder. How convenient that you can't remember 8 weeks of progressive illness. I remember every symptom. I remember trusting my wife while she poisoned me. That's not something you forget. Nolan answered each attack with the same factual calm. He didn't take the bait. He didn't raise his voice. He simply told the truth and let it stand. When the defense finally finished, Nolan stepped down. He walked past Celeste without looking at her. His shoulders were straight, his face composed. He'd survived her murder attempt and her attorney's character assassination in the same year. The next afternoon, December 12th, they called Lyra. My 12-year-old granddaughter walked to the witness stand in her school clothes, a blue sweater and khaki pants that made her look even younger than she was. Her hands trembled as she placed one on the Bible. Prosecutor Reeves approached slowly, her voice soft and patient. Lyra, what did you hear your stepmother say on those phone calls? Lyra's voice was barely audible. She said soon, and then we'll be together, and once this is over. She sounded happy. Did you notice anything unusual about your father's coffee? Sometimes Celeste would make it, then pour it out and make it again, like she was measuring something. Lyra described watching her father get sicker, while Celeste seemed happier. Being told by her stepmother that if anything happened to Dad, she and Beckett would get to go live with a nice new family. Her voice broke on those last words, like it was a vacation, like we were disposable. 3 jurors were crying openly. Lyra's testimony lasted 20 minutes. When the prosecutor finished, she returned to her table and waited. The defense attorney stood. He conferred briefly with Celeste, whose mask had finally cracked her face tight with barely controlled panic. Your Honor, he announced the defense has no questions for this witness. 12 years old. Lyra was 12 years old when she took that witness stand and described her stepmother planning to murder her and her brother. 12. The same age I was when I learned to drive a tractor. She learned to testify against a serial killer. Judge Reyes's voice was unusually gentle, Ms. Prescott. You're excused. Thank you for your bravery today. Lyra walked to where Ramona waited at the gallery rail, and my sister wrapped both arms around her. Lyra's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Prosecutor Reeves stood your honor, the state rests. The defense's decision not to cross-examine Lyra was tactical. Attacking a crying 12-year-old would alienate the jury beyond repair. But that tactical retreat meant every word Lyra spoke now stood as undisputed fact. As we walked out of the courthouse that afternoon, Detective Garrison pulled me aside. Her face was grim. Defense is calling witnesses tomorrow. They're putting Celeste on the stand. The text messages appeared on courtroom screens in 48-point font, large enough for everyone to read. Celeste's words to Marcus Miller, preserved forever in digital evidence. Once he's gone, we'll be free. Kids asking questions. May need to relocate them. Increased dosage too slow. I watched Celeste's face as her own words condemned her. The performance was over. December 13th. The prosecution had saved this evidence for last. Prosecutor Reeves stood beside the screen and read each message aloud while the jury followed along. April 18th, Celeste to Miller. He's getting suspicious about the coffee. Miller to Celeste, no. Increased to 0.5 milligrams. We're too close to stop now. May 22nd, Celeste to Miller. Kids heard me on phone last night. Lyra's smart. Miller to Celeste. Same problem as Morrison's kid. We know how to handle witnesses. June 10th, Celeste to Miller. How much longer I'm tired of playing devoted wife. Miller to Celeste. 2 more weeks, then freedom and $450,000. Ladies and gentlemen, Prosecutor Reeves said, turning to face the jury, these are not the words of a coerced victim. These are the words of a willing co-conspirator planning murder and discussing the elimination of children. 47 text messages. That's how many times Celeste and Marcus Miller discuss murdering my son and grandchildren. 47 times she could have stopped, could have refused, could have chosen differently. She chose murder every single time. Detective Garrison took the stand next. She explained how I'd found the burner phone while rescuing Lyra and Beckett, how I'd contacted law enforcement within hours, how forensic analysts had verified the phone numbers belonged to both defendants. Mr. Prescott found the phone on June 15, 2023, while attempting to rescue his grandchildren from immediate danger, Garrison stated. He contacted 911 within hours and turned over all evidence. On December 15th, closing arguments began. Prosecutor Reeves stood before the jury and summarized 6 months of investigation and 2 weeks of testimony. She displayed Nolan's before and after photos again. She showed forged signature comparisons. She reminded them of Lyra's testimony about being told she'd get a nice new family. Marcus Miller operated a murder business for 12 years, she said. Celeste Whitfield was his eager student. Together, they poisoned Nolan Prescott for 8 weeks, planned to murder his children, and would have succeeded if not for a father's instinct and a doctor's courage. Her voice dropped lower. When you deliberate, remember one thing. Nolan Prescott trusted his wife with his life. She served him poison in the same cup she served love. Don't let her fool you the way she fooled him. The jury deliberated for 2 days. You want to know what justice sounds like? It's a jury foreman reading guilty 12 times once, for each count, for each crime, for each moment they chose evil. It doesn't erase the harm, but it says officially and permanently what they did was wrong. That matters more than you'd think. December 18th. At 3 in the afternoon, we got the call that the jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled quickly. The jury filed in. None of them looked at the defendants. That's how you know. The foreman stood a woman in her 60s with gray hair. She held the verdict form in steady hands. In the matter of the state of Arizona versus Celeste Whitfield and Marcus Miller, on the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find both defendants guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find both defendants guilty. On the count of insurance fraud, we find both defendants guilty. On the count of child endangerment, we find both defendants guilty. The courtroom erupted. Celeste collapsed forward onto the defense table, her shoulders shaking. Marcus Miller sat expressionless. Beside me, Nolan gripped my hand so hard I felt bones grinding together. Lyra started crying, not sad tears, but the kind that comes from releasing something you've been holding too long. Judge Reyes banged her gavel. Order, I will have order in this courtroom. Sentencing came 2 days later. This court has rarely seen crimes so calculated, so cold-blooded, and so utterly devoid of humanity, Judge Reyes said. You targeted children. You turned love into a weapon. Marcus Miller received 35 years without parole. Celeste Whitfield received 25 years without parole. When that judge sentenced Celeste to 25 years, I didn't feel satisfaction or revenge or triumph. I felt exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying a weight so long you forgot what your shoulders felt like without it. Justice doesn't feel like victory. It feels like permission to finally rest. We walked out of that courthouse into December sunlight. Nolan stood beside me on the courthouse steps, Lyra and Beckett flanking him. "It's over," I said. "It's finally over." Nolan pulled back and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in his face for months: hope. "No, Dad, it's not over. It's beginning. We get to rebuild now. We get to live." We drove back to Truth or Consequences the day after sentencing. Lyra asked to go home to the desert where it was quiet and nobody was trying to hurt us, and I realized she was right. The courtroom battles were over. Now came the work of learning to live without fear. Detective Garrison called on a Tuesday in January, 6 weeks after the verdict, while I was teaching Beckett to identify animal tracks in the snow. "Mr. Prescott," she said, her voice carrying something like vindication. "We just reopened the Jennifer Morrison case. With Miller's conviction and your son's testimony as pattern evidence, the DA thinks we can finally get justice for the 2018 victim. Your family's courage is saving other families." "How many other families are out there?" I asked. "How many deaths that were ruled natural were actually murder?" "We're reviewing at least 4 more cases connected to Miller's pharmacy records. Your family's story is helping us solve murders that were buried as accidents." Beckett tugged my coat, pointing at rabbit tracks leading toward the sage. I nodded, and he followed them carefully, his 9-year-old face serious with concentration. Above us, January sky stretched pale blue and endless. Our ordeal hadn't just been about surviving. It had become evidence testimony pattern proof that was unlocking justice for families who'd grieved for years thinking their loved ones had simply died. By March, Nolan had gained back all the weight he'd lost, and more. His cardiac function normalized. Doctors cleared him to return to work part-time as a software engineer. He started consulting from home, taking video calls in his home office while Lyra and Beckett did homework at the kitchen table. One afternoon, he came to the ranch looking healthier than I'd seen him in a year. "Doctor says my heart is fully recovered," he told me. "Physically, I'm healthy again. But Dad, I can't walk past the coffee maker without my hands shaking." "That's not weakness," I said. "That's your body remembering what your mind tried to ignore. It'll fade with time. Here's what healing looks like. It's not linear. It's not clean." Some days, Nolan walked past a coffee pot without flinching. Other days, he had panic attacks in grocery store coffee aisles. Some nights, Beckett slept soundly. Other nights, he woke screaming. That's recovery. 2 steps forward, 1 step back forever. Lyra thrived. At 13, she joined the debate team at Truth or Consequences Middle School and earned straight A's. In April, she wrote an essay about courage and truth-telling that won a regional writing competition. Her English teacher called me in for a conference. "Your granddaughter has something special," Ms. Martinez said. "She's not just smart, she's wise. She speaks about justice and truth in ways most adults can't articulate." I read Lyra's winning essay that evening. It was titled "Speaking Truth Even When It's Terrifying," and it described testifying in court without naming names or details. The courage to speak when silence is easier. The responsibility to protect others by refusing to protect abusers. Watching Lyra win that writing competition, reading her essay about speaking truth, even when it's terrifying, I cried. Not because I was sad, because this child had testified against a serial killer at 12, and instead of breaking, she'd become stronger, wiser, more eloquent about justice than most adults. Trauma had refined her, not destroyed her. One evening in May, Lyra told me, "I'm not afraid anymore, Grandpa. I was afraid for so long, and then I testified, and it was the scariest thing I ever did. But I survived it. Now nothing else seems that scary." "You're the bravest person I know, sweetheart," I said. "Braver than any soldier I served with." Beckett's healing took a different path. In April, he joined Truth or Consequences Little League. Baseball became his therapy. The structure, the teammates, the simple joy of hitting and running. He made friends with kids who didn't know his story. I attended every game, watched him strike out, watched him hit singles, watched him slowly become a kid again instead of a trauma survivor. His nightmares decreased from nightly to weekly. We didn't talk about Celeste much. Her name became something we avoided, a bruise we learned not to press. Until July, when Nolan received her letter. It arrived on a Tuesday in a plain envelope with Arizona State Prison return address. Nolan brought it to my ranch that evening and set it on my kitchen table like it might explode. "She wants to visit," he said quietly. "Claims she wants to apologize, to explain, to give me closure." Ramona, who'd been making dinner, turned from the stove. "It's a manipulation. It's what she does. But what if I need to hear her say it?" Nolan's voice was strained. "What if I need to look her in the eye and ask why?" I picked up the letter and read it. Celeste's handwriting was neat, almost childlike. She claimed she thought about what she'd done every day. That prison had changed her. That she owed Nolan an apology face to face. "She's manipulating you from a cell," I said. "This is what she does." Lyra, who'd been doing homework at the far end of the table, spoke up. "I never want to see her again. Not ever." The letter sat on Nolan's kitchen table for weeks. He'd pick it up, read it, set it down. On a Sunday evening in late July, Nolan made his decision. He called the prison and scheduled a visit for August 15th. "I need to do this, Dad," he said quietly. "Not for her. For me. I need to look at the person who tried to kill me and ask why. And then I need to walk away and never think about her again." I didn't argue. I just said I'd be in the waiting room when he came out. Because that's what fathers do. We stand guard while our sons face their demons. The Arizona State Prison complex in Perryville sits like a concrete fortress in the desert razor wire glinting in August sun. I drove Nolan and the kids there on a Saturday morning, 3 hours from truth or consequences. None of us speaking much. Nolan had decided the children needed to see their stepmother, one time supervised, to get closure. We arrived at 10 in the morning. The facility loomed against pale sky guard towers, concrete walls, layers of chain link and wire. Lyra stared at it from the back seat, her face unreadable. Beckett asked nervously, "Grandpa, is Mom gonna be in chains like on TV?" "No, buddy. She'll be in regular clothes, just in a room with guards nearby." Security took 40 minutes. A corrections officer processed our paperwork and explained visitation rules. I was allowed to accompany them as supervising guardian, but had to sit 10 feet away during the visit. You know what a prison visitation room looks like. Linoleum floors, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, cameras in every corner, and the smell of industrial disinfectant trying to mask despair. That's where we took 2 children to see the woman who planned to murder them, and somehow it was the right thing to do. Celeste entered wearing standard-issue prison khakis. She looked smaller than I remembered weight loss, no makeup, hair pulled back plain. When she saw the children, she started crying immediately. I sat at the required distance and watched. Nolan positioned himself between Celeste and the kids like a human shield. Lyra stood back with arms crossed, defensive. Beckett, now 10 years old, instinctively moved towards Celeste, then stopped, conflicted. "I'm so sorry," Celeste said through tears. "I know those words don't mean anything, but I'm so sorry." Lyra's voice was cold. "You were going to kill us. You told us we'd get a nice new family, like we were replaceable." Celeste's face crumpled. "I was sick. I was controlled by Marcus. I wasn't thinking clearly." "The text messages say different," Nolan said flatly. "You discussed dosages. You discussed eliminating witnesses. Those weren't Marcus's words. They were yours." Celeste nodded, accepting it. "You're right. I can't blame everything on him. I chose to participate. I chose money over your life. I chose greed over your children's safety." Nolan asked the question he'd driven 3 hours to ask. "Why just tell me why you did it?" Celeste wiped her eyes. "I was greedy. I was weak. Marcus made it seem easy. By the time I realized I was helping commit murder, I was in too deep. I'm a coward. There's no excuse." Then Beckett did something none of us expected. He walked forward and hugged Celeste. When Beckett hugged Celeste, I wanted to pull him away. But Nolan put his hand on my arm, because that hug wasn't for her. It was Beckett giving himself permission to remember that people can be complicated, that monsters sometimes tucked him in at night. That's a hard wisdom for a 10-year-old. "I don't understand what you did," Beckett said quietly, "but you were nice to me sometimes. I remember that too." Celeste broke down, completely sobbing into his shoulder. Lyra remained where she was watching, but not approaching. She didn't owe Celeste anything, and she knew it. After 15 minutes, Celeste asked Will, "You come back. Can I see you again?" Lyra answered with emotional intelligence far beyond her years. "We might visit again. Maybe. But I need you to understand that you don't get to decide our relationship anymore. You don't get to ask things of us. You hurt us. We're the ones with power now." Celeste nodded through tears. "I understand. Thank you for even coming today. That's more than I deserve." Nolan stood, signaling the visit was ending. "Goodbye, Celeste. I hope you find peace. But our peace doesn't depend on you anymore. We walked out into Arizona sunlight. As we drove away, I watched Lyra in the rearview mirror. Her shoulders were straighter. Facing her abuser and setting boundaries had given her power back. By October, life had normalized in ways I hadn't thought possible. Nolan received a promotion to senior engineering consultant with a $20,000 salary increase. His company recognized his talent and resilience. He'd survived attempted murder and come back stronger. We celebrated at La Cocina, their favorite restaurant in Truth or Consequences. Ramona had driven in from Albuquerque. Lyra wore the dress she'd bought with her writing competition prize money. Beckett couldn't stop talking about his upcoming baseball tournament. I raised my glass when the food arrived, to Nolan's promotion, to courage, to choosing to live fully after trauma tried to kill us. Nolan raised his glass to family, to Dad, who saved my life when I didn't believe it needed saving, to Lyra, who testified when she was terrified, to Beckett, who reminds us how to be kids, to Ramona, who held us together. Lyra smiled, to second chances, for all of us. Senior engineer. 2 years ago, Nolan could barely lift his head off a hospital pillow. Now he's leading engineering projects and earning 6 figures. Survival isn't just staying alive. It's thriving afterward. That's the real victory. We ate and laughed and told stories. Normal family dinner in a normal restaurant in a normal small town. Except we knew exactly how precious normal was. We'd earned it. As we left the restaurant that October night, Nolan pulled me aside in the parking lot under desert stars. Dad, I got a call from a publisher today. They want me to write a book about surviving domestic abuse as a male victim. They think my story could help other men who are ashamed to admit they're being abused. I'm thinking about doing it, turning our nightmare into something that might save someone else. The story wasn't over. It was evolving into purpose. 3 years after nearly losing everything to a calculated murder plot, I survey my crowded dining room on Thanksgiving morning and realize that survival is not the same as living, but healing can transform both. My kitchen fills with the sounds and smells of a family preparing a meal together. Nolan stirs gravy at the stove, his hands steady and sure. Ramona checks the turkey. Lyra and Beckett hang hand-drawn gratitude cards around the dining room. Lyra's card reads, "I'm grateful for Grandpa's courage and for learning that sometimes adults need kids to be brave too." Beckett says, "I'm grateful for baseball and desert hikes and family that doesn't give up." Nolan glances at me. 3 years ago, I couldn't even hold a spoon without shaking. Now, I'm making Thanksgiving dinner. That's not nothing I tell him. It's everything, he replies. I hang my own card on the wall. I'm grateful we're all here. That's everything. We sit down to eat at 1 o'clock. The table is crowded with food and faces I thought I might lose. Nolan says grace, his voice strong and clear, thanking God for second chances and family that refused to break. After we eat, Nolan returns carrying a cardboard box. He sets it on the coffee table with reverence. I have something to show you all. He pulls out advanced copies of his memoir. The cover is simple. The Invisible Victim, a man's journey through intimate partner violence. Beneath it, dedicated to Harlan Lyra and all survivors who thought they had to stay silent. Nolan opens to the first page and reads aloud. I didn't know I was dying because I didn't believe men could be victims. That belief almost killed me. This is the story of how I survived attempted murder by my wife and how shame nearly succeeded where poison failed. The room falls silent except for his voice. He reads about the symptoms the ER visits, the morning coffee ritual, slowly killing him, me finding the evidence, and him calling me a liar. When he finishes, my voice breaks. You're going to save lives with this son. Lyra wipes her eyes. Dad, you're the bravest person I know. Not for surviving, for telling the truth. Beckett adds, I'm proud of you, Dad. For real. Then Lyra reaches into her backpack and pulls out an envelope with the Georgetown University seal. My turn, she says, smiling through tears. She reads the acceptance letter aloud. Full scholarship to Georgetown's undergraduate psychology program, with a focus on child trauma and advocacy. I wrote about the courtroom, she explains. How it felt to tell the truth when everyone was watching. I want to help other kids do that. I want them to know they can be brave even when they're terrified. Nolan embraces her, both crying. You turned the worst thing that ever happened into a calling. You took your power back in that courtroom, sweetheart, I tell her. Now you're going to teach others how to do the same. Beckett clears his throat. I have news too. He explains that his high school baseball coach offered him a spot on the freshman varsity team. The scholarship isn't full ride, but it's substantial. Coach says I have a real shot at varsity my freshman year. I'm going to play for us for what we beat. Nolan pulls his son close. You were 9 years old when this started. Now look at you. As afternoon light fades, we gather on my front porch, a ritual we've adopted. The New Mexico desert stretches out before us, sage and sand glowing gold in the late November sun. Nolan holds his book. Lyra clutches her acceptance letter. Beckett wears his scholarship certificate around his neck like a medal. 3 years ago, I say quietly, I got a call at 3:40 in the morning that my son was dying. Today I'm watching the sunset with all of you. That's grace. Nolan puts his arm around my shoulders. We didn't just survive, Dad. We rebuilt, and we did it together. Lyra looks at each of us, no matter where we go. Georgetown College, wherever we come back here, every Thanksgiving. Promise. We promise, all of us, out loud. 5 people, 1 porch, 1 sunset, 1 family that refused to break. Ramona squeezes my hand. You saved them, Harlan. No, I say. We saved each other. That's what family does. As the sun dips below the desert horizon, my phone buzzes. A text from Detective Garrison. The Morrison cold case files have been reopened. 3 additional families came forward after reading about your trial. The work continues. I show the message to Nolan. He nods slowly. Our story didn't end with the verdict. It rippled outward, touching families we'll never meet, solving murders that had been buried as accidents. The work of justice, it turns out, is never truly finished. Looking back at this family story, I see my mistakes clearly now. I didn't like Celeste from the beginning, but I stayed quiet because I thought it wasn't my place to interfere in my son's marriage. I told myself Nolan was an adult who could make his own choices. That silence almost cost me everything. Don't make my mistake. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, especially when it involves the people you love most. Family betrayal doesn't announce itself with warning signs. It disguises itself as love, while poison brews in coffee cups. What I learned through this family story is that love means fighting for your family, even when they don't believe they need saving. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. It targets men and women, the strong and the vulnerable marathon runners, and corporate executives. Male victims face unique shame because society tells them they can't be abused, that real men don't get poisoned by their wives. But family betrayal knows no gender. Intimate partner violence is intimate partner violence, regardless of who holds the cup. I believe God put me through this nightmare so I could help other fathers recognize the signs, so other families wouldn't have to learn these lessons the way we did. The Lord's timing brought Dr. Thatcher into our lives exactly when we needed him, and I'll be grateful for that divine intervention for the rest of my days. This family story taught me that family betrayal can wear the mask of devotion, but truth always surfaces when love refuses to stay silent. Don't wait until it's almost too late. Trust your instincts. Speak up. Fight for your family even when they think you're the enemy. That's what real love looks like. Thank you for walking this journey with me until the very end. I'd love to hear your perspective. Drop a comment below, sharing what you would do if you found yourself in Harlan's situation, discovering your son's spouse was slowly poisoning him. Would you have acted sooner, differently? Your thoughts genuinely matter to me. If this narrative resonated with you emotionally, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories. A gentle reminder, while inspired by real patterns of domestic violence and intimate partner abuse, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes to emphasize the lesson. If this type of content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better. God bless you.